Chapter 441. Yi Lingmin actually escaped from Sky Peak's Duantian Cliff on her own and entered the arena to compete without permission. Her guts were already abnormally big. At this time, Coitus Faction's Chi Mei ran over, flustered and exasperated. Everyone turned to look and saw that unlucky woman's stench wafting over, as if she had crawled out of a cesspit. Master, that person Chi Mei was so drunk from her own stench that she cried. How could she have known that when she went to relieve herself normally, someone actually covered her head with a sack from behind and beat her up? Her entire body was covered with the smell of feces and urine. What too infuriating, truly infuriating, disaster fell from the sky when she was relieving herself. This kind of luck was indeed unparalleled. Everyone looked at this stinky girl with sympathetic gazes. Even her master, Granny Witch, disliked her stench and hurriedly avoided her when she walked over. It was truly an unexpected disaster with overwhelming bad luck. Such a delicate beauty coughing and stinking of urine truly didn't smell good. Hurry up and go wash up, Granny Witch angrily rebuked. She still dared to make a fool of herself in front of others with such a pestilence appearance. Her old face was completely thrown away by this idiot. Senior sister, I'll accompany you to wash up. Chi Hua, who was dressed in plain clothes and only had a small pink beaded flower on her head, walked over and draped a robe over the stinky Chi Mei. Chi Mei also knew that if she continued to stand here, she would definitely be an eyesore to her master. Hearing this, she could only follow Chi Hua to wash up and change clothes, hating the woman who snatched the arena from her to the bone. The two of them didn't walk far when they saw a hunchbacked old man being supported over. To avoid the old man's disdain, Chi Hua hurriedly pulled her senior sister a little closer and left after casting a glance out of the corner of her eye. Sir, those two are disciples of Coitus Faction, Chio-san whispered. Vulgar women, withered flowers, and withered willows. Luigi coughed a few times and stood still, his cold gaze fixed on the arena. My lord, the strength of these two lower domain disciples is comparable to our soldiers, Chio-san said. He's just an outer court soldier material and doesn't even have the qualifications to guard the inner court. Luigi's eyes were full of disdain. Suddenly, Luigi's body stiffened, and his expression changed slightly because Mo Lien and Arbor both turned their heads and gazed coldly at them. At the same time, Duan Yu also turned around with a grin and raised his brow. His gaze swept over Luigi and Chio-san before withdrawing. Luigi didn't see Duan Yu and Peng Zhang's battle, so he didn't know how strong this youth was. However, he had a deep impression of Mo Lien, a youth who could control a powerful fire spirit. Even he did not dare to easily offend him. At this moment, they were very far away from the arena, but even so, those three people could still sense them. It had to be said that even Luigi was surprised by their sharp acuity. At this time, the competition on the arena had already entered a white-hot stage. The silver spear in Ning Bihuan's hand suddenly lifted Yi Lingmin's headscarf and cloak, exposing her entire face to everyone. Senior Sister Yi? Many Holy Water Sect disciples covered their mouths as they exclaimed softly. Yi Lingmin was holding a willow leaf saber. Because her shoulder had been struck by the mystic energy seeping out from the silver spear, her shoulder was already red. She was extremely furious, and her mind was in a mess, so her saber technique was out of order. Chapter 442. She did not spend so much effort to participate in the competition to lose to this woman in front of her. She wanted to prove to her master that not choosing her to participate in the competition was absolutely a wrong decision. Ning Bihuan creased her brows and coldly said, "Admit defeat. I don't want to take your life, so leave the stage yourself." With a shake of her silver spear, she directly sent Yi Lingmin flying. Yi Lingmin rolled 3 times on the stage before plopping down on the ground. Her eyes revealed her unwillingness to admit defeat, and she ferociously glared at Ning Bihuan. You think you've won for sure? The two of them did not summon their mystic beasts from beginning to end, as if they had made a pact together. Ning Bihuan shook her head. You're a Holy Water Sect disciple, right? You didn't go through the early stages of the competition and directly skipped levels to participate in the finals. This is already against the rules. I didn't bicker with you, so you should quit while you're ahead. I'm telling you, you can't win against me. Yi Lingmin's stubborn temper flared up, and she suddenly flipped her hand, pinching a small bottle in her hand. The eyelids of the three peak masters sitting in the front seats all twitched. Murong Sun's face darkened, and she had just shouted Lingmin when she saw Yi Lingmin uncorking the bottle and drinking the 3 drops of holy water she had preserved until now in one gulp. Holy water sect disciples all knew that holy water was most effective and improved the fastest when it was consumed for the first and second time. Yi Lingmin had been reluctant to consume it a second time and had been accumulating holy water the entire time. Every time she asked Lady Holy Water for more holy water, she would preserve it until today. She swallowed it all in one gulp. The 3 peak masters' expressions were abnormally unsightly. Soon, all the mystic energy from all directions gathered above Yi Lingmin's head, forming a small vortex of stars that continuously gathered inside her body, until it completely erupted. Yi Lingmin advanced in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone's eyes were filled with intense incredulity. Everyone knew how difficult and dangerous it was for a great level 10 mystic cultivator to advance to a great level 11 mystic cultivator. But what happened just now? Why did Yi Lingmin suddenly break through the barrier of great level 10 mystic cultivator? Before everyone could react, Yi Lingmin had already jumped up on the spot and energetically swung her saber. The lancet spun in the air and whooshed towards Ning Bihuan. Ning Bihuan's silver spear flew up. With a solemn expression, she flicked it at Yi Lingmin's blade. Immediately, she felt her wrists suddenly become heavy, and she almost lost her grip on the silver spear. "Let go!" Yi Lingmin shouted in an awe-inspiring manner. She suddenly pulled back her lancet and chopped at Ning Bihuan's left wrist. Ning Bihuan had no choice but to retreat, but the silver spear in her hand was suddenly snatched away by Yi Lingmin. With a kick, she sent it flying. With a whoosh, it landed on the stage and stuck into the ground at an angle. Everyone was silent. Murong Sun's expression was indescribably unsightly. However, Coitus Sect's Granny Witch's eyes were filled with doubt. Could this be the legendary Holy Water Spring of the Holy Water Sect? Its effects were truly so good that one could immediately advance from a level 10 Great Mystic Cultivator to level 11 after drinking a mouthful, crushing Ning Bihuan, who was also a great level 10 Mystic Cultivator, in a matter of minutes. The godly water was really that effective. I won! Amidst the silent audience, Yi Lingmin raised the lancet in her hand above her head and shouted. On the side, Ning Bihuan clutched her chest and silently glanced at her. She directly walked to her silver spear and pulled it out from the ground. Then, she swiftly jumped off the stage and left. Chapter 443. Xixia Valley's Valley Master was baffled and did not know whether he should go on stage to announce the results of the competition. Seeing that no one else was going up, Yi Lingmin jumped down from the stage and walked straight to Murong Sun. She straightened her neck and bowed to the 3 peak masters. Master, Aunt Master. Murong Sun's expression was unsightly to the extreme. She coldly stared at Yi Lingmin and did not say anything. She merely stared at her for a long time. This extremely powerful silent stare caused Yi Lingmin to panic. In reality, it would be best if she could enter closed-door cultivation right now. In order to win the competition just now, she swallowed 3 drops of holy water at once and forcefully raised her cultivation to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator, obtaining an overwhelming victory. However, in reality, she did not completely assimilate these 3 drops of holy water. If she wanted to completely stabilize her cultivation as a level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator, she still needed a period of closed-door cultivation. She merely wanted to win too much. She wanted to display herself in front of her master and obtain her master's approval and affirmation too much. She wanted her master to know that she, Yi Lingmin, her master's 3rd disciple, was not inferior to anyone else. But right now, Her master's aloof gaze made her feel afraid from the bottom of her heart. Yi Lingmin quietly called out, "Master." "Lingmin, it's because I don't know how to teach disciples that your willful, reckless, and lawless personality is today." Murong Sun's disappointed gaze made Yi Lingmin's heart tremble. Why was it like this? She won the fight. Why was her master so disappointed in her even though she won? Didn't she win? "Master." Yi Lingmin completely panicked and looked at the other two ant masters in a daze. However, the two people she saw had the same grave expression. "Master." Yi Lingmin wanted to reach out and grab Murong Sun's sleeve. However, Murong Sun pushed her back 2 steps. She dazedly stood there and looked up at her unfamiliar master in a daze. "From today onward, you are no longer my disciple. You are also no longer a disciple of the Holy Water Sect. Go," Murong Sun said aloofly. As if struck by lightning, Yi Lingmin staggered back 2 steps and looked up at Murong Sun with tear-filled eyes. She could not help but ask, "Why, master? Why?" Third senior sister, that the other disciples of First Peak were also dumbfounded. They wanted to surround Murong Sun and dissuade her, but none of them dared to move when they saw Murong Sun's warning gaze. Yi Lingmin suddenly knelt in front of Murong Sun with a plop and wailed, "Master, master, don't chase me away, master. Disciple was wrong, master. Your disciple was disobedient and shouldn't have run away from Duantian Cliff. Master, please forgive me this once. Master, master, don't chase your disciple away." Murong Sun had already made up her mind. Even if other people came over to put in a few good words for Yi Lingmin, Murong Sun still insisted on expelling Yi Lingmin from the sect. "Master, you can leave. Go back and think about what you did wrong. If you feel guilty in the future, take good care of your former sister when we meet again in the pugilistic world." Murong Sun turned around and did not look at Yi Lingmin again. "Master," Yi Lingmin was completely flustered. She turned around and saw Arbor in a daze. She rushed in front of her and grabbed her arm, begging for mercy. "Little junior sister, help third senior sister. Little junior sister, go beg master. Master likes you the most. If you speak up for me, she will definitely listen to you. Little junior sister, senior sister is begging you." Chapter 444. Third Senior Sister. Arbor blinked and looked up at Murong Sun, who was standing on the side with her back facing them. She only felt that Master's back was stiff, as if she was hiding 1,000 things that she couldn't say. "Third Senior Sister, Master is in a fit of anger right now. How about you leave first, and I'll slowly persuade Master?" Arbor asked softly. Yi Lingmin glanced at Arbor with teary eyes. "Little junior sister, you'll really help me?" Arbor nodded solemnly. Sorry. Yi Lingmin didn't expect that her little junior sister, whom she dissed the first time they met, would disregard former enmity and help her. She tightly grasped the little girl's hands and gripped them tightly. She turned around to glance at Murong Sun's cold back and didn't dare to linger any longer, running away in tears. On the other end, Lu Yizhi and Xiao-san's figures had long disappeared. Xiao-san supported Lu Yizhi as they walked out of the arena. Lu Yizhi was so excited that he couldn't control himself the entire way, and his entire body was trembling lightly. "It's not the holy water spring. It definitely isn't the holy water spring. How is this some holy water spring?" Just now, he clearly saw that the holy water sect girl in the competition clearly swallowed 3 drops of water. 3 drops. 3 drops of water immediately raised her from level 10 to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator. Such a large leap. Ha ha ha. He was now very clear that the holy water spring was definitely a smokescreen thrown out by the holy water sect to conceal the holy water's true identity. They deceived the world for so many years. Ha 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 ha. Great. A tiny lower star domain's holy water sect could actually do whatever they wanted under the 6 prefectures' noses. How audacious. How is this some holy water spring? It was clearly holy water. Speaking of holy water, one had to mention the 5 spirits' origins. Everyone in the 6 prefectures knew that as long as one comprehended one of the five spirits' origins when breaking through to level 15 Great Mystic Cultivator, they could smoothly enter a higher realm and achieve the transition from the mystic realm to the spiritual realm. And among the 10 levels of the water origins, the one and only and unparalleled origin among the origins was holy water. Normally, everyone's comprehension of the five spirits' origins was between the first and the fifth level. Only those with especially good talent could comprehend the origins of the higher levels. What was the holy water? That was the foundation that could crush all the water spirits below the ninth level. Once the Holy Spirit appeared, no one would be able to contend against it. This was the holy water, holy fire, holy wood, holy earth, and holy lightning of the five spirit origins. Quickly go and inform all of Shuntian Prefecture's forces on Seacone Planet. Immediately travel day and night to the holy water sect outside Five Moon City. We must obtain the sacred water before the other 5 prefectures. Holy water was such an important item, so the holy water sect definitely wouldn't bring it with them when they went out this time. Presumably, it was currently quietly staying in the holy water sect's secret ground, waiting for their Shuntian prefecture to come and harvest it. No, she was waiting for him. Luigi went to seize it. Yes. Chio-san immediately cupped his fists and left in a hurry. Luigi looked up at the dark blue sky and narrowed his cold eyes slightly. He coughed several times and sneered. It seems like the weather is about to change. The rest of the competition became dull and boring. Moreover, many people's minds were no longer on the competition. In the end, it was Darling Xiao who obtained victory. Why? Because the other top 4, such as Duan Yu, Su Shanshan, Sita Yi, and Bailey Shi, couldn't be bothered to fight with her, so she automatically advanced to first place. Chapter 445. However, she did not feel excited or joyful at all. In the end, the 3 sects won a complete victory, but there was no joy on the Holy Water sect's 3 peak masters' faces. When she returned to her courtyard, all the senior sisters ran over to give her gifts. They glorified it by saying that little junior sister had won honor for the Holy Water sect, so they gave gifts to the champion. Su Shanshan gave her a level 15 Mystic Dagger and told her that she took it from Maple Pavilion and that it was quite handy. Arbor's intuition was a bit strange. Her senior sisters all ran over to give her gifts, and they were all very valuable. What happened? Arbor asked seriously. What could happen? Yang Shirong smiled and said, My little disciple, you've been in the sect for so many years, but you've never returned home. How about you go home and take a look this time? Arbor nodded. She also had this plan, but that she had more or less assimilated her essence water recently, so she could not suppress her cultivation anymore. She planned to find a place to raise her cultivation before going home. Master, are you still angry at third senior sister? Arbor walked to Murong Sun and tugged on her sleeve. Can't forgive her? You know what kind of person she is. Master always knew that she was unyielding and competitive, but why was she so angry today? Arbor felt that she must have overlooked something. Suddenly, a thought struck her, and Arbor hastily asked, Is it the holy water? Because third senior sister used holy water on the spot and attracted attention? Then what about the sect's master and senior sisters? Arbor only felt that things were a bit off. Silly child. What could happen? Murong Sun said with a smile. Don't let your imagination run wild. Go rest early. The other sects have to leave Dwelling Valley tomorrow morning. We also have to leave. Child, you haven't returned for so many years, so your parents must be worried. Stay at home for a while when you go back this time. You don't have to rush back since there's nothing going on in the sect anyway. Murong Sun tugged on Arbor's hand and quietly instructed, Being outside is different from being in the sect. Be careful of everything and take good care of yourself along the way. Young Master Mo is here, Su Shanshan said. Arbor walked out a little unhappy. Mo Lien took her little hand and squeezed it. What's wrong? Because I'm leaving tomorrow? Can't bear to part with me? The little fellow was not in the mood to talk and laugh. She looked up at him sullenly. He suddenly thought of something and rummaged through his purple amulet. He took out a small rectangular iron box and threw it to Emolien. I don't know how to open this. Emolien couldn't help but laugh. She lowered her head to look at the small rectangular metal box. It was cast so tightly that there wasn't a single opening. Duan, you should know. The little fellow was still a bit sullen. Help me hand it to him, so he can study it. If you go back to the sect, then we'll have to go our separate ways tomorrow. Don't leave me with a sour, gourd face. The only thing I can't forget is your little sour, gourd face. Emolien suddenly reached out to lift her small face. Chow Chow, give me a serious smile. I really haven't seen you smile in all these years. Arbor rolled her eyes at him. How could she smile for no reason? How about I tell you a joke for you to smile? Emolien reached out to tease her little face. Go ahead. The little stoic was not happy at all. Once upon a time, there was a bad guy called Duanyu. One day, he was beaten to death by a good person called Emolien. Arbor. Chapter 446. It really was hilarious. Arbor glanced at him and poked his chest with his finger. It's not funny. Emolien reached out and pulled the little fellow into her arms, chuckling softly as she hugged her. Suddenly, an indignant voice came from the door. Duanyu dashed over and shouted in a huff. Of course it's not funny. Jojo, don't listen to his nonsense. I'm an incomparably good person. Incomparably good? Emolien threw him a slightly disdainful look before casually smashing that small rectangular metal box at his head. Duanyu was so angry that he wanted to send it flying with a kick. However, just as his foot was about to touch the small metal box, Emolien's voice leisurely rang out. Jojo's. Duanyu staggered, and his kick abruptly changed into a grab. His movements were practiced and smooth as he snatched the small, lousy box into his hand. This should be a concealed weapon box, Emolien said dryly. Duanyu smugly looked up and cast him a sidelong glance. He snorted and waved the small metal box in his hand, bragging, Don't tell me it's broken. Let me tell you, this concealed weapon box is a sealing technique passed down from ancient times. Normal people absolutely can't open the seal on the outside. I'm 99% certain that there's good stuff inside. This small metal box had troubled darling Xiao for many years. When she had nothing to do, she would fiddle with it in her hands. She had soaked it in water, roasted it in fire, and even pricked it with a needle before throwing it into a frying pan. Cough, cough. Now that she heard Duanyu's words, the little fellow pattered over to him with great interest and urged repeatedly, Hurry and open it. You can open it too. Duanyu tossed the small metal box and pulled Arbor to his side with one hand. He said with a chuckle, You have to call me Big Brother. Classmate Mo's face darkened. Duanyu, that punk, really knew how to push his luck. He originally thought that the icy little fellow would refuse, so Duanyu was only joking. Who would have thought that the next second, Darling Xiao straightforwardly called him Big Brother in a clear and crisp voice. She even impatiently tugged at his sleeve. Let's go. Duanyu was taken aback. Emolien was furious. His handsome face was ashen as he reached out and pulled the little fellow into his arms. His entire body was filled with low pressure. No matter how slow-witted Xiao Mu was, she could still feel the displeasure that filled her entire body. The little fellow lifted his head from his arms and looked at his expression in bewilderment. He asked in astonishment, What's wrong? You called him brother. Emolien gritted her teeth. Arbor nodded and turned his stoic face to look at the foolishly smiling Duanyu. He asked with a frown, What's wrong with him? If it's not my brother, then is it my sister? Emolien. Why am I speechless? Emolien's shoulders trembled, and she lowered her head to hug the little lady with a stifled chuckle. For a moment, she couldn't restrain her laughter. His darling was still young, though when Duanyu returned to his senses and heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He glanced at Emolien and harumphed. What are you laughing at? If I'm the older sister, then you're also the older sister. TSK. Do you think that face of yours is inferior to mine when it comes to pretending to be a girl? Bah! Who's a girl? Your whole family is made up of girls. Jojo, let's go. Don't get touchy. Lead the way. Mo Lien swatted away Duan Yu's restless paw, which earned Duan Yu's furious glare. Chapter 447. The three of them shifted to another room and sat down. After placing the small metal box on the table, Duan Yu took out a dozen or so exquisite tools from his inner world. The little girl propped up her cheeks with both hands as she curiously watched Duan Yu work with her dark eyes. She really couldn't come up with something like this. She was a bit angry just thinking about it. With her brilliant brain, she couldn't even open a concealed weapon box. It was truly infuriating. This kind of concealed weapon box that has been passed down since ancient times was sealed by the ancestors using a kind of pouring technique. It can't be opened even if you slash it with a sword, soak it in water, or burn it with fire. When Duan Yu said this, he reflexively looked up at Miss Qiao and discovered a strange expression on her face. Duan Yu couldn't help chuckling in spite of himself. Don't tell me you've already used all the methods I've just mentioned. As he said this, he couldn't help coughing several times while stifling his laughter. Darling Qiao harumphed and rolled her eyes at him. Ha ha! Duan Yu couldn't hold back his hearty laughter. Blame her for being uncultured. Now that she was being laughed at, Xiao Mu simply turned her face aside. However, she saw that although Mo Lien didn't laugh out loud like the dunce Duan Yu, he still couldn't conceal the smile in his eyes. That smile was practically flowing out from his pair of slightly curved phoenix eyes. Tisk, Duan Yu controlled his laughter and quickly placated the little fellow. You can't be blamed for being stupid. Our dear Xiao Mu's eyes widened. This darling wasn't stupid to begin with. Only the Duan family of Guanlan City knows a thing or two about this kind of pouring technique. However, they also don't know how to unseal it. That family head of theirs is absolutely stupid. Even after learning concealed weapons for so many years, he probably can't open it. Duan Yu pursed his lips in disdain when he recalled the faces of those people from the Duan family. Arbor quickly urged, "Hurry up and do it. Don't tell me you're going to waste time until daybreak." Duan Yu's smile faded, and he lowered his head to take the small metal box in his hand. He took out a small pointed awl forged from ice crystals and lightly fiddled with the four corners of the metal box. She didn't see how he did it, but his movements were so practiced that it dazzled the eyes. There was only a light click sound. There was a small hole in the top of the small iron box that was so tightly sealed that there wasn't even the slightest gap. The three heads immediately gathered together, and Duan Yu simply stood up with a half-bent waist. He turned the small metal box upside down and picked up a small metal bowl in passing. A stream of corrosive liquid flowed out of the small hole, and when it fell into the small iron bowl, it made a sizzling sound. Wow, that hidden weapon master used poison to seal this hidden weapon box. Arbor recalled that she had thrown this thing into the frying pan. Cough, cough, cough. Fortunately, this concealed weapon master's craftsmanship was exceptional. Otherwise, wouldn't Fat Sis's 30-year-old family heirloom have been ruined? Duan Yu couldn't help teasing her when he saw the little fellow's odd expression while his hands busied themselves. What? Did you fry it in a pot of oil? Baby Qiao, why am I suddenly speechless? The two youths looked at her little face and couldn't help but burst into laughter. You really did bomb before? Humph. Arbor propped up her chin with both hands and simply turned her head to the side to ignore them. Duan Yu's movements were rather fast. As he spoke, he had already poured out all the corrosive poison from the small hole. Then, he took out a long and thin needle. His eyes were focused, and his movements were extremely slow as he inserted the needle. Chapter 448. Arbor nervously held her breath. Was this strange little iron box that had perplexed her for so many years finally going to be solved? Her large, dark eyes emitted a joyous glint. Crack, 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 crack. Duan Yu put down the needles in his hand and quickly placed the little iron box flat on the table. His eyes narrowed as he looked at it. The sound of a delicate spring opening could be heard from the iron box's interior. Suddenly, the two youths reached out at the same time and pulled Arbor to her feet, dragging her backward. This curious darling was stretching out her large head at the time and was caught off guard, causing her to topple backward Emolian swiftly caught her and carried her up by the waist before swiftly retreating out the door. Just as the three of them stepped out of the door, Emolian hugged the little fellow tightly in her arms and pressed her down, causing the three of them to lie down on the ground together. They then heard an earth-shattering explosion from inside the door. The perfectly fine door was instantly blown into pieces and completely destroyed. Not only did it alarm everyone from the 3 sects and 5 factions, it even scared Xixia Valley's Valley Master to the point of jumping up from his stool and roaring angrily. "Which bastard is blowing up the room?" Xixia Valley's Valley Master was shocked to the point of jumping up from his chair and roaring angrily. "Which bastard is blowing up the room?" He had already swiftly dashed out the door towards the source of the sound. When the 3 sects and 5 factions, as well as Xixia Valley's large group of disciples, rushed to the door of this room, they saw that the room was in a complete mess. After the explosion, Emolian and the other two promptly scooped up the metal box that had been blown out of the door and hastily ran away. Who would still foolishly stay in the same spot and wait for someone to berate them that at this time they were running and flying, only stopping when they were far away from the southern courtyard. This place was a secluded cave in Xixia Valley that was usually uninhabited. The three of them finally sighed in relief and exchanged glances. Arbor couldn't help but be amused by this glance. The two handsome youths, who had always tidied themselves up neatly, were now covered in dirt, as if they had jumped out from some corner of the earth. Their long hair was messy, and there was a lot of mud on their faces, making them look funny. Emolian's white robe was covered in dust. Her entire body was covered in dust. Duanyu wasn't that good-looking either. His brocade robe's collar was covered in small clumps of dirt, and he was trembling as he stood there. Ha ha ha! A clear and melodious laughter that was both familiar and somewhat unfamiliar suddenly rang out. The two youths who were tidying up their clothes suddenly turned their heads, their eyes widening at the same time as they looked in shock at the little girl in front of them, who was holding her stomach and laughing. Emolian, who had recovered her wits, flew to the little girl with a whoosh and scooped her into a hug. She excitedly murmured as she hugged her, "Jojo, you smiled, Jojo, you smiled, you smiled." It was no longer that cold and stiff smile that cracked the corners of her mouth, nor was it that expressionless little stoic face. She really smiled. Her smile was so lively and adorable as snow. In that instant, Emolian only felt as if the entire world had been lit up by her. The grayish-white color suddenly turned into a myriad of colors, and it was extremely beautiful. The slow-witted Duanyu didn't manage to snatch the little girl, so he circled around the two of them and stretched out his hand, shouting, "Hurry and move aside, move aside." He hadn't seen the little girl smile so happily for half his life. Now that he finally saw it, he only saw it for a second before that rascal Emolian blocked him. Truly too hateful. Chapter 449. Jojo. Emolian reached out to cup the little girl's small face, which still carried a trace of a smile. He lowered his head and nuzzled her smooth forehead, saying, "I hope that you will always be like this in the future, happy and happy." It would be even better if she had a permanent smile that Duanyu couldn't snatch the little girl and could only glare from the side, but he still nodded when he heard this. Although that guy was very hateful, his words seemed to make sense, so he reluctantly agreed. Arbor suddenly reached out to pinch a speck of mud from Emolian's face and shouted unhappily, "The mud on your face got on my face." Puffed. Ha ha! This time, it was Duanyu's turn to be amused, and he guffawed while pointing at Emolian. Emolian simply shamelessly picked up the little girl and purposely rubbed against her face. "Right, we're all muddy, so you should join us too. Right. This is called enjoying blessings and enduring misfortune together," Duanyu interjected. Arbor actually guffawed, his pair of dark eyes brimming with mirth as he gazed at Emolian like this. It was as if the haze in his heart had dispersed by quite a bit. "Jojo." Emolian caressed her small face, unable to contain the smile on her lips. "Thankfully, we slipped away quickly. Otherwise, if we encountered Old Man Xixia, we would have been nagged by him again," Duanyu exclaimed as he patted the dust off his sleeves. Emolian turned around to glare at him. "You still have the cheek to say that. You even boasted that you were invincible, as if you could immediately open the concealed weapon box in your hands. Now we're all in such a sorry state. It was an accident. It was an accident. Duanyu chuckled awkwardly and rubbed his nose. His peach blossom eyes flickered as he cast a bright and charming wink at Arbor. Don't worry, Jojo. It was just a small spring that wasn't turned on earlier, so it ended up like that. I'll do it again this time, and it'll be done right away. Mo Lien hugged Arbor, and the two jumped back in unison. What are you doing? Don't look at me with such distrust. Trust, you know? Trust. Go, go, go. Let's go into the cave and make sure we succeed this time. Duanyu simply ran to their side and grabbed one in each hand, making the two unwilling people follow him into the cave. Succeed or die trying, the illuminating pearl flew high up in the air, illuminating the cave. Mo Lien pulled Arbor to sit a little further away, closer to the entrance of the cave. It would be more convenient for them to escape later. Why are you sitting so far away? Duanyu pestered them again and sat down across from them. He picked out a long needle and started fiddling with that hole again. Don't worry, I'm an experienced worker. It really was just a slip of the hand earlier. Duanyu looked up with a chuckle and winked at Arbor. Jojo, trust, you know? I'm the person you trust the most. Arbor's gaze flickered, and he stared fixedly at the youth. A smile hung on Duanyu's lips as he skillfully inserted the slender needle. His frivolous smile disappeared and replaced it with a serious expression as he cracked the spring that fit the inside. Kacha, 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 kacha. Several sounds rang out in succession, and Arbor's heart was pulled by these sounds, and his small face was filled with anxiety. Mo Lien patted his back to comfort him. Suddenly, they heard a very light and crisp crack right next to their ears. The small metal box suddenly peeled open like a flower petal, revealing a transparent, crystalline square box inside. Chapter 450. Through the transparent crystal, one could see a thin piece of paper swaying in the crystal, rolling up and unrolling. It was very lively. What is this? Arbor exclaimed. The Tianji treasure blueprint. The two youths exclaimed in unison, their faces full of shock. What is the Tianji treasure blueprint? Arbor tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve. Speaking of the Tianji treasure blueprint, we have to talk about this person, Tianji Z. He was a very impressive trap and concealed weapons master 300 years ago. Duanyu interrupted. This person was proficient in the art of traps and concealed weapons, and his skills were not simple at all. I was wondering who made this kind of concealed weapon box that had long been lost. So it was him. The art of traps and concealed weapons? Then this whatever map is actually a secret manual on traps and concealed weapons? It was truly bizarre. How did the Holy Water sect even have this thing? Then this thing is definitely useless to me. Arbor was discouraged. She didn't understand traps and concealed weapons, so what did she need this thing for? Here you go. Take it and study it. The little fellow unhappily pushed that transparent crystal towards Mo Lien and Duanyu. The two youths couldn't help but laugh. Jojo, do you know that if news of this Tianji treasure blueprint leaked out, it would cause a commotion? Mo Lien helplessly looked at this ignorant little girl. Where did you get it? The little girl was disappointed. To her, it was useless even if it caused a commotion in the 6 prefectures and 3 provinces. A lousy map was completely useless to her. No matter how much of a commotion it caused, it couldn't excite her. When I went to Maple Pavilion to choose mystic techniques, it followed me all the way neurotically. She was depressed at the mention of this. At that time, she was running out of time, and this metal box tricked her just like that. Io! This darling was still unhappy. Duanyu couldn't help but be amused. Jojo, let me tell you, you really picked up a treasure this time. Really? What? What treasure? To the two youths who liked to study traps and concealed weapons, it was a treasure. But to her, it was just a piece of shit map that, seeing the little girl's gloomy face, the two youths laughed and stopped teasing her. Mo Lien said, Duanyu is right this time. This really is a treasure. That's because this map itself is a divine artifact that Tianjizi spent his entire life forging. Ah! Xiao Mu was dumbfounded. This map was a divine artifact? What was a divine artifact? Mo Lien flicked her finger lightly on her little head and couldn't help but chuckle. What the hell is a divine artifact? You don't have to care about that. All you need to know is that he's extremely powerful. Come, be obedient and form a contract with it first. At the same time, I will help you seal the divine artifact and suppress it to a level suitable for your current cultivation. Otherwise, you won't be able to use it. But what about the hidden weapon technique inside? She had no use for it. The little fellow asked with a conflicted expression. Stupid. Duan, you chuckled. Wouldn't it be fine if you formed a contract with it first, and then handed the secret manual to us? This is a divine weapon. Why are you still hesitating? Hurry, 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 it'll be daybreak if you hesitate any longer. No matter how she looked at it, this thin piece of paper didn't look like a divine weapon at all. Arbor expressionlessly reached out her small hand and stuck it against the outer crystal shell of the map, injecting a wisp of mystic energy. It really was only a small wisp of mystic energy, so small that it was almost negligible, but the entire crystal shell immediately peeled off. The map inside rapidly jumped up and abruptly emitted a dazzling golden light. Allow me to go out for a walk. The rest of the chapter will be even better at night. Chapter 451. The two youths couldn't help but be dumbfounded by this situation. TSK. They completely agreed with Darling Xiao's words this time. Back then, it was definitely this fellow, this Tianji treasure blueprint that kept pestering their darling. Otherwise, how could she be so unreserved? Oh my, you're a divine artifact. Why did you open on your own when she injected just a little bit of mystic energy? The two of them had already secretly decided that when the little girl's mystic energy wasn't enough to form a contract with this divine artifact, they would have to provide mystic energy from the side to support her. However, the situation was just this strange. In less than 3 seconds, the little girl successfully formed a contract with the Tianji treasure blueprint. The Tianji treasure blueprint turned into a shooting star and directly entered her conscious. The two of them stared at her dumbfoundedly for a while. Arbor didn't notice at first because she was using her mystic conscious to examine the Tianji treasure blueprint in her conscious. She couldn't see anything special about it, but after this blueprint unfolded in her conscious, she could casually flip through the mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques inside. After a glance, Darling Xiao lost interest in looking at it. Those mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques were all strange drawings that looked like scribbles. The few words were also abstruse and profound, so who could understand such a ghastly thing? When she returned to her senses, she saw the two youths looking at her with shining eyes in a daze. Our dear Xiao Mu simply didn't know that with her pitiful cultivation as a level 8 mystic cultivator, it was basically impossible for her to form a contract with this kind of divine artifact without assistance from the side. He had never seen or heard of such an oddball like her. Ahem. Duan Yu coughed lightly and said with a chuckle, "This is probably fate, right, huh? Isn't that right, Prince Mo?" The Tianji treasure blueprint must have taken a fancy to the little girl. How should he put it? Mo Lien glanced at him and nodded in rare agreement. Xiao Mu was baffled. She didn't even know what the heck they were conversing about. She merely activated her mystic conscious and summoned that Tianji treasure blueprint out from her conscious. The mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques on this are all scribbles. You can see for yourselves. She couldn't understand it anyway, that immediately after, with a move of his profound sense, the Tianji treasure blueprint suddenly unfolded in front of the three of them. It stretched for several meters and was covered in golden light. The diagrams leaped up and floated in front of the three of them. The two youths hurriedly ran over and stood on the left and right sides of the picture. They looked at it for a while with an intoxicated look on their faces. Arbor, blame her for being uncultured. Jojo, how about I make a copy of it? The two teenagers asked in unison. How? With a flip of their hands, they each took out a piece of jade. Arbor ran over to take a look and hurriedly asked, "Isn't this the underworld jade, something used to pass on techniques?" Of course not. Duan, you couldn't help but chuckle. These two pieces are ordinary crimson jade and purple jade. The kind of netherworld jade you speak of can only be discovered by chance. Not only can it be used to inherit secret techniques, but it can also be used to nourish the conscious. TSK, where can I get one? Xiao Mu once again exposed her lack of culture, so she didn't say anything else. Of course, she wouldn't ask them how to make a copy. She might as well keep the Tianji treasure blueprint open and let them work on their own. This Bao Bao is a great talisman master. When this Bao Bao draws talismans, none of you can understand it. Hence, the two youths each stood on one side of the picture. Chapter 452. Using a strand of mystic conscious as a guide, Mo Lien and Duan Yu recorded the contents of the Tianji treasure blueprint into the Crimson Jade and the Cub Jade without missing a single word. They didn't even miss a tiny mark. Then, they flipped through the blueprints and discovered that they were all complete. Only then did the three of them say a few more words and leave to rest. The next morning, when Arbor rolled over and opened her eyes, she sensed that there was someone in the room. She lifted her eyes and saw Murong Sun standing by the window. Murong Sun turned around when she saw her moving and smiled at her. "You're awake, Master." Arbor rubbed her eyes and rolled out of the blanket that was wrapped in a cocoon. "Master and your Aunt Masters are about to set off now." Murong Sun walked to the bedside and naturally pulled the little girl to sit in front of the dressing mirror as usual. She took a comb and helped the little girl comb her messy long hair before skillfully coiling her hair into a knot. "Master hasn't taught you too many things or given you anything good in all these years. You're a hardworking child and rarely make Master worry. You can keep this." Murong Sun quickly put a jade bracelet on the little girl's left wrist. The jade bracelet was engraved with a jade-colored pine tree. It was flawlessly white and sparkled with a jade-like white light. Arbor was originally a bit sleepy, but she was completely startled awake now. She looked down at the jade bracelet on her wrist. How could she not recognize it? This was clearly the key to opening Maple Pavilion. "Master!" Arbor stood up and nearly bumped into Murong Sun's chin. "Are you saying your last words?" She wasn't stupid. Don't think she didn't hear Murong Sun's words as if she was saying her last words. Why would she give her the key to Maple Pavilion without rhyme or reason? "Nonsense!" Murong Sun heavily smacked Arbor's head. "What nonsense are you spouting? Your master is very strong. Don't joke around. Who on Seacone planet has the ability to kill me? Then this?" Murong Sun brusquely glanced at her. "This is an early coming-of-age gift for you. That's all Master can do." "Nonsense. This is the symbol of the previous sect masters." Arbor was so nervous that his eyes were almost red. Moreover, she was not even 13 years old yet. There were still at least 2 years to go before her coming-of-age ceremony. Why was her master in such a hurry to give her a present in advance? "Anyway, you don't have to worry about it. Just take it since I'm giving it to you." "Why are you so talkative?" "I don't usually see you talkative, but you're really annoying today." "Master, I'll go back to the sect with you," the little girl said immediately. "You lass, you're so young yet so long-winded. Tell me, how many years have you not been home? Your mother and father might even think that our holy water sect is a man-eating sect that abducts children and doesn't even let them return home." Murong Sun poked her little head with a finger and couldn't resist laughing. "I already said I'm fine. You just like to let your imagination run wild all day and worry too much. All right, Master really has to set off. You should also quickly pack up and go home." "Ah, Master," the little fellow shouted loudly. Murong Sun looked down at her with a grin and couldn't resist teasing. What? Aren't I just telling you to go home? You can't bear to part with Master?" "You're not lying to me." "Of course. When have you ever seen Master lying to you?" Murong Sun patted her little head with a smile and hugged her little body, gently patting her back. "Master will never lie to you." Chapter 453. Murong Sun pulled Arbor back to her stool in disbelief. After combing her long hair, Murong Sun hugged her. "All right, Master has to leave. You're alone. So you have to take good care of yourself on the road and hurry home. Okay? Arbor furrowed her brows and nodded hesitantly. That's a good girl. An obedient child is a good child. All right, master's leaving. Be good by yourself. Murong Sun nodded in satisfaction and forcefully pulled her gaze away from her. She turned around and left without even looking back. Soon, the Holy Water Sect's team set off. Arbor ran out and stood at the door in a daze, feeling that something was off. She saw the three peak masters leading everyone away. Yang Shirong and Lu Yin turned around and waved at her. Everyone's faces were brimming with smiles as they waved goodbye to her. Arbor felt very uncomfortable and stood at the door in a daze for a long time. It wasn't until Mo Lien called her softly that she returned to her senses and turned her head to look at him. What is it? Did something happen? Mo Lien grasped her hand and gently squeezed it. Arbor thought about it but still shook her head. Are you leaving now? He had left for so long, so it was time for him to return to the capital. How about I send you back to Shijio City? Mo Lien asked with a smile. Hui Feng appeared next to the crown prince like a ghost and said icily and mechanically, Your Highness, the great king orders you to return within 3 days. 3 days? Can we fly? Even if we can fly, we can't fly to the capital? Mo Lien grumpily retorted. At this time, the great king was in the southern study, tossing a pile of tattered memorials onto the floor with a headache. Did you send an urgent message from 800 miles away? Did the crown prince reply to me? Did he say when he would return? Gong Chong and miserably kneeled on the floor and repeatedly shook his head. This old servant already sent 2 more memorials. This unfilial son. The great king was so angry that he wanted to smash the teacup. Only then did he realize that the teacup had already been smashed, and the eunuchs had just cleaned up the floor. Why did you leave so many things for me to deal with? Gong Chong and wept silently. Great king, you've been suppressing these matters for the past few days. You really can't blame His Highness the Crown Prince. In the past, didn't this unfilial son do things rather quickly? He finished reading 3 days' worth of memorials in half a day. Why are there so many of them today? Come and take a look. Why was this He Qijing from the Ministry of Works complaining about being poor again? Every month, you have to reach out and ask for food from me. I'm about to eat chaff myself. Gong Chang'an. He really didn't want to bother with the furious king. Can't you ask him to step down? In the past, when the crown prince was handling state affairs, there was never such a big commotion. One moment the cup was smashed, the next moment the brush washer was also smashed. Gong Chong and felt that it was really not easy to be in their line of work. Go over and ask if that unfilial son has sent a letter back. Did he say when he would return? The great king raised his brush and drew a cross on He Qijing's memorial. Want your sister's food? Don't have it. Great king, you've already asked 5 times today. Save me. Hui Feng looked at his master with a different expression. He didn't say anything and merely watched silently. Master, if you take a detour to Shijio City, then 3 days definitely won't be enough to return to the capital. You and Little Snow should return to the capital. Arbor reached out to stroke the snow leopard's large head, who was squeezed between the 2 of them. Little Snow is fast on her feet, so 3 days might not be enough. She should be able to return in 4 or 5 days. I'm not in a hurry, Mo Lien said softly. Chapter 454. Hui Feng moved his lips, but Mo Lien cast him a chilly glance, and he immediately shut his mouth. No need. Arbor had other plans in his mind, and he unfurled his brows slightly. He nodded at him and said, Go back as soon as possible. I'll go home by myself. At this time, Duan Yu and Situ led the people from the Daybreak sect and Heavenly Tao sect to bid her farewell. Wei Nanfeng waved his hand at her and said with a smile, Little miss, I don't know when we'll meet again after parting today. Big Brother will solemnly apologize to you for our past matters. Let's bury the hatchet. You can't treat me as an enemy when we meet again. Shoo shoo shoo, where did this Big Brother come from? Duan Yu irritably glared at him. Arbor expressionlessly looked at Wei Nanfeng and nodded reluctantly. Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but be overjoyed and he cast a smug look at Imo Lien. How is it? This brother has a sharp tongue, so I'm pretty good at dealing with people, right? Scram. Imo Lien rolled her eyes at him. All right, you can all leave. I'm going home anyway. Let's bid farewell here, everyone. Arbor suppressed his thoughts, but he didn't show it on his face. When they were bidding farewell, Xixia Valley's Valley Master also walked over with his 2 personal disciples and said with a smile, "We just sent off the Holy Water Sect group, so you'll also be leaving. Let's bid farewell together." Everyone cupped their hands in salute and politely bade farewell to Xixia Valley's Valley Master. Xixia Valley's Valley Master looked at these youthful youths with a smile. These were the future experts of the sect, the cornerstones of the sect. Situi smiled at Arbor and said with a nod, "Jojo, we'll meet again in the future. Take good care of yourself on the road. You can come visit our Heavenly Tao sect when you're free." "Goodbye, Senior Brother Situ." Arbor nodded. Duan Yu turned around and gazed deeply at her, as if he wanted to imprint this glance into his eyes forever. The youth didn't say anything else and turned to leave with the people from the Daybreak sect and Heavenly Tao sect. The small courtyard emptied out at once. Imo Lien and Arbor looked at each other and clasped their hands together. "If you're not in a hurry after returning home, then don't return to the Holy Water sect for now. How about you come to Guanlan City to play?" Imo Lien gazed at her with a grin. "Guanlan City is really fun. When the time comes, I'll take you out for a stroll and eat good food." Arbor gave him a "I'm not a foodie" look and nodded slightly at him as a form of agreement. Imo Lien's face was full of joy. He raised his hand and patted her little head. "Then it's settled. I'll wait for you." "Yes." Arbor's eyes moved and he nodded. Imo Lien didn't know that his "I'll wait for you" had been waiting for a long time. He had waited so long that his heart was broken and cold to the bone that if he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have let her go today. He raised his hand and hugged her. It was just a gentle hug and then he let go. He didn't know that a long time had passed since he turned and left. If he had known, he wouldn't have let go even if he died. He wouldn't that Arbor looked at the empty small courtyard and abruptly started to leave. She felt that Master and Aunt Master must be hiding something from her. She felt that something must have happened to the sect. She decided to stealthily follow them back to take a look and follow her heart. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to settle down. The little fellow wanted to chase after them, but her figure suddenly swayed after 2 steps, and she clutched her chest with an unsightly expression. Chapter 455. "Miss Qiao, what's wrong with you?" Xixia Valley's Valley Master hastily rushed up and supported her nearly collapsing figure. Your cultivation realm is unstable. This is a sign that you're about to advance." You've been suppressing your cultivation realm to advance? No, your body can't take it anymore. You have to enter closed-door cultivation immediately to stay in our Xixia Valley. Don't worry, I'll send disciples to guard you. I'll bring you to a secluded place." "No, You can't. Xixia Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang also panicked. "You're immature, child, but I can't allow you to continue like this. If you continue suppressing it, your mystic meridians will be affected in the future. If it gets serious, it will affect your lifeline. If your master knew, she would definitely be heartbroken." "Child, why are you doing this?" Valley Master, I have a very important matter." "Wendan, help your little junior sister to my cultivation room and guard her well." "Valley Master, Little junior sister, listen to my master. Even if I let you leave our Xixia Valley like this, you won't be able to hold on halfway." Wendan hastily sent the other 2 female disciples a look and half-carried Arbor away. Xixia Valley's Valley Master sighed heavily. "Murong Sun, I can only help you to this extent." Imo Lien sat on the snow leopard's back. After exiting the valley, she asked Hui Feng, who was straddling the wind wolf, "Have Ao Yi and his team arrived yet?" "They're already outside the valley. They'll accompany Miss back to Shijia City." Imo Lien was silent for a moment before saying, "I keep feeling like something's going on." Xiao Qiao's gaze didn't seem right. Moreover, Murong Sun's group left too hastily. Although they left with smiles and even greeted each other when they saw them, he kept feeling like Imo Lien considered it for a few seconds before pointing and saying, You go inform Mei Yi and have him investigate what exactly happened to Holy Water Sect these past 2 days. He frowned as he recalled that day in the arena. A female disciple named Yi Lingmin drank a few drops of water and quickly advanced. Apparently, the Holy Water Sect has a holy water spring. Have Mei Yi investigate this matter. Also, find some people to follow me to the Holy Water Sect to take a look. Yes. Huifeng always felt that the Crown Prince was worrying too much about the Holy Water Sect. The 3 sects and 5 factions were all big sections. What could possibly happen to them? Hurry up and do it. The Crown Prince frowned and urged. This subordinate will inform them now. On the other side, not long after the Holy Water Sect's party left Xixia Valley with smiles on their faces, their charming faces darkened one by one. Doya, stay here and keep watch. If you see your little junior sister come out, make her stay no matter what, Murong Sun said aloofly. She understood this disciple of hers all too well. She definitely wouldn't leave the matter at that. Xixia Valley's Valley Master might not necessarily be able to stop her. Eldest martial uncle, I want to go back with you. Doya's eyes immediately reddened as she shook her head and said loudly, Doya, your eldest martial uncle is right. You can't go back to Holy Water Sect with us. Lu Yun said seriously. You forgot that you are the Alava tribe's clan leader. Your father, as well as your young brother and sister, are all looking forward to your early return. Murong Sun nodded and turned to look at Su Shanshan. Shanshan, you take. Master, don't think of chasing me away. This disciple has been following Master since I was 5 and practicing martial arts in the Holy Water Sect. The Holy Water Sect is this disciple's home. This disciple has no other place to go, Su Shanshan said calmly. We vow to live and die with the Holy Water Sect. All the disciples shouted in unison. It's over. See you tomorrow. Chapter 456. Gurgle. The small ice bead jumped out of Arbor's waist pocket and hovered in the air, emitting a gentle light. Master, the more unstable your emotions are, the more it will affect your advancement. Why don't you quickly restrain your emotions and enter closed-door cultivation? Quickly come out after you've advanced. Lady Holy Water's soft and adorable voice rang out. Arbor sat upright in the small room that Xixia Valley's Valley Master usually used for cultivation. Her forehead was drenched in a cold sweat. Just as Lady Holy Water had said, the current situation was indeed disadvantageous to her and the sect. She could only advance as quickly as possible and hurry back in order to shorten the time to the greatest extent. If she continued to struggle, it would only do her more harm than good. When she thought of this, Arbor took a deep breath and held her breath, blocking off her 5 senses. 10 intermediate-level blue calming talismans flew out from her fingertips. Intermediate-level talisman, blue calming talisman. For 8 hours, it would allow the person to rapidly concentrate and calm their mind, achieving the goal of doubling the mystic energy absorbed from the outside world. Lady Holy Water instantly entered Arbor's Dantian mystic domain. She circled around the remaining essence water and emitted a faint aura, accelerating this bit of essence water to fuse with Master's mystic domain as quickly as possible. After 1 day and night, Arbor finally successfully entered the state of advancement. All the mystic energy within a radius of 300 meters in Xixia Valley was mobilized and swarmed towards her small cultivation room at a terrifying speed. Xixia Valley's Valley Master and his personal disciple, Wendan, stood outside the small room and looked up ruefully at the mystic energy that had already condensed into a large nebula. Peak Master Murong's last disciple is truly remarkable. Who knows how much she'll grow if she's given several years. Xixia Valley's Valley Master sighed. Master, are we really unable to help with the Holy Water Sect's matter? When Dan couldn't bear to look at the tightly shut small room. Little junior sister is exceptionally intelligent. I feel that she already knows about this matter. Xixia Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang heaved a long sigh. I had the 5 elders lead the 50 disciples over. It can only be said that I'm merely showing my sincerity. Master is also the person at the helm of Xixia Valley, so I must consider my own sect. I also can't let your martial uncles and senior brothers and sisters make some meaningless sacrifices. Disciple understands. When Dan nodded with a heavy heart, Master, are the people of the 6 prefectures really in existence that we can't surpass? No. Luo Jinyang shook his head and raised his hand. He said firmly, I believe that one day, someone will surpass them. You young children have outstanding talent and excellent qualifications. As long as you work hard enough and believe in the future, surpassing others is not a daydream. Master, this disciple will definitely work even harder. When Dan nodded heavily. It's just that junior sister will probably be alone and helpless in the future. It's too pitiful. Master, why don't we secretly leave her in Xixia Valley? This child, I don't think we can keep it. Luo Jinyang looked funny on the surface, but he knew better than anyone else. Xixia Valley simply couldn't keep Arbor. This little girl was bound to soar high in the future. The 6 prefectures making a move today might not necessarily be a good thing. The world was in turmoil, and danger lurked everywhere. What would happen in the future would depend on each person's fortune. 3 days later, Xiaomu opened her apathetic eyes. After completely assimilating with her essence water, her cultivation had already broken through what people called the Great Mystic Cultivator Threshold, level 10. Moreover, she was steadily climbing to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator entry level. Chapter 457. Arbor's cold gaze revealed a trace of intense, killing intent as the vortexes in the depths of her eyes spun like star fragments. She used her inner vision and saw that the second branch meridian in her body had already formed, but she was in no mood to pay attention to it right now. The Spirit Division Record Soul chapter had already officially entered the 3rd layer, tempering the progress of her 2nd and 3rd branch meridians. At this time, her 1st branch meridian had already expanded to the same width as her main meridian, about a finger's width. She could completely condense all the mystic energy in her branch meridian into mystic conscious, open a complete inner world, or use her mystic eyes. It would no longer affect the consumption of mystic energy in her main meridian during battle. In other words, if an ordinary level 11 mystic cultivator could condense 50% of their mystic energy into mystic conscious during battle, it would already be considered a high-level condensation of mystic conscious. Then her mystic conscious definitely wouldn't exceed the 6th level of the mystic realm. Our dear Xiaomu, however, could condense all the mystic energy in her 1st branch meridian into mystic conscious. At the same time that her cultivation entered the great level 11 mystic cultivator realm, her mystic conscious also reached the 11th level of the mystic realm. Thus, those great level 11 mystic cultivators in the same batch as her basically couldn't compare to her in battle. Entering the cultivation of a great level 11 mystic cultivator meant that Arbor could finally contract mystic beasts. But right now, she wasn't in the mood to go to the mystic beast forest to find any powerful mystic beasts. Just as she was about to get up, she saw a snow-white ball tear open the void and rush out. Startled, Arbor didn't have time to ponder why the little white squirrel could rush out of Paradise Planet on its own when she suddenly felt a slight pain in her finger. Looking down, she saw a drop of blood seeping out and merging with the snow-white ball's drop of blood. Suddenly, it emitted a dazzling and strange light. A circle of totem contract characters appeared above the human and beast's heads, flickering back and forth. Light and shadow flickered back and forth. The contract characters formed a circle of constantly swimming tadpole-like characters and gradually shrank to the size of a ring before abruptly landing beside the defensive ring. At this time, in addition to the defensive ring on Arbor's middle finger, there was an additional pitch-black, lusterless contract ring engraved with transparent embossed inscriptions on her index finger. This was beyond her expectations. Arbor simply didn't expect that the little white squirrel would suddenly rush out of Paradise Planet and successfully form a contract with her after she successfully advanced to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator. She actually didn't like cute beasts. She liked wild beasts like the snow leopard or the 7-star white tiger. This way, she could feel a little more secure. She liked strong and healthy companions like this. They could accompany her as she grew up and walked through a prosperous life. But now that every mystic cultivator could only contract with one mystic beast in their lifetime. This was a clear rule. Therefore, Arbor wasn't as angry as she imagined. In fact, she should be angry. This little beast didn't ask for her opinion at all and contracted with her on its own. However, Arbor had always been more lenient towards partners who had been together for a long time. If she wanted to form a contract, then so be it. At most, she would use the summoning talisman to summon 2 more beasts in the future. The premise was that the summoning talisman wasn't a scam. Master, are you angry? A small and timid voice emerged from the depths of her mind. This was the convenience of forming a contract with a beast. Even if you formed a contract with a low-level little mystic beast, as long as the contract was successful, the master and beast would be able to communicate mentally without any hindrance. Chapter 458. Shouldn't I be angry? Arbor's voice was cold as she replied. The small voice was almost about to cry. I'm sorry, Master. I want to accompany Master forever. I will work hard to recover Master. I will become very tired. Finally, the timid voice became weaker and weaker, as if it didn't have much confidence in itself. Arbor waved her hand at the little white squirrel curled up by her feet. The little guy's bean-like eyes suddenly lit up, and with a whoosh, it jumped into her arms. Little Furry's face was filled with happiness as it rolled around in her arms. Actually, I'm not that strong either. Arbor stroked the little white squirrel's fur in a rare moment of attentiveness, her voice indifferent as she said, if I were strong enough, perhaps she wouldn't have fallen into today's passive situation. She stood up, and her footsteps suddenly stopped. Her mystic sense naturally condensed in front of her eyes, turning into 2 invisible palms that pushed open the door to her inner world. She saw that her inner world, which was about 15 cubic meters in size, had expanded by more than 10 times. The originally 3-story golden mountain of jewels had now revealed its original appearance. It turned out that it had only revealed the tip of the iceberg at the beginning. Now, this golden mountain of jewels was so tall that one couldn't see the end of it. Her tiny mystic sense avatar stood at the foot of the mountain, as insignificant as a speck of dust. Her food box. Arbor's mystic sense moved, and that delicately carved red sandalwood food box suddenly flew out from under the mountain of jewels, swiftly appearing in her palm. Arbor let out a small sigh of relief. The mystic sense condensed in her branch meridians could finally allow her to retrieve things from her inner world without any hindrance. Her 2 small hands used a bit of force to open the lid of the food box. There were still 10 white, chubby, and cute meat buns, steaming with steam, neatly arranged in the food box. There was a line of lollipops in the gaps. Yes, when she saw this little thing, the word lollipop had inexplicably appeared in her mind. It was as if someone had once held this little thing and waved at her with a smile, coaxing her to eat it. Arbor hugged the lunchbox and sat down. For some reason, he felt a little sad. It was only when her profound sense entered the food box that she clearly realized how big the space inside was. No matter how many meat buns you took out, there seemed to be an endless supply of them. What was even more frightening was that there weren't just buns inside. She used her mystic sense to casually flip through the contents and took out several plates of soup and vegetables with different flavors. It looked like a very powerful lunchbox. It seemed that all the food in the restaurants around the world had been swept clean by it. She felt that as long as she hugged this lunchbox, even if she had never gotten anything in her life, she would not die of hunger or thirst. Master, little Chochio's timid voice brought her back from her silence and daze. Arbor subconsciously reached out to touch his cold little face. He took out a spoon, drank a few mouthfuls of soup, and ate a few spoonfuls of rice. His eyes were a little red. Chirp, chirp. Arbor hugged the little thing and muttered to herself, I seem to have forgotten something very, very important. I can't remember it no matter how hard I try. Master, don't worry. Slowly. You'll remember. The little white squirrel rubbed against her chest. I hope so. Arbor put down the spoon. Chapter 459. Arbor set down the soup ladle and put away the food she had eaten into her inner world. Only then did she close the lid of the food box. She hugged the food box for a short while before moving it back into her inner world. Her current inner world was about 180 cubic meters. An ordinary mystic cultivator's inner world was only about 3 to 5 cubic meters. They needed to continuously train and increase their mystic conscious before they could expand their inner world. It was considered pretty good if they could expand their inner world to more than 10 cubic meters on their own. Thus, Arbor stared at her inner world in a daze for a long time. At that time, Fanshoa's cultivation was much higher than hers. Fanshoa was already a level 12 great mystic cultivator, but strangely, her inner world was bigger than his. It was more than half the size, exceeding 20 cubic meters. At that time, this kind of inner world could already be considered a wondrous inner world. But compared to her current inner world, it really paled in comparison. Arbor could only chuckle. Her mystic conscious crossed the jewels and gold mountain that reached the top of the barrier, and saw the pair of stone statues that she had been longing to see again. No, it wasn't a pair. Arbor was dumbstruck. She stared at them for a long time. There were actually many similar stone statues. They were arranged in 8 horizontal rows. She was momentarily dazzled when she looked at them and actually couldn't see the end. Our dear Xiaomu was stunned for a while. She shifted her mystic conscious all the way over and carefully counted. She discovered that there were as many as 800 pairs of stone statues that were as tall as a 3-story building. At the back of the stone statues, there was a lone statue that looked completely different from the other stone statues. Its body was spiraling sideways, and its head was in the posture of howling at the sky. There seemed to be 2 bulging bumps on its head. A figure spiraling upward like this? Arbor's eyes abruptly contracted. She tried to use her mystic conscious to shift this statue out, but a piercing pain suddenly assaulted her mind. She quickly pulled her mystic conscious out of her inner world and threw her apparition into her conscious to continue cultivating before closing the door to her inner world. Only then did she let out a long sigh of relief. It seemed that with his mystic sense, there was no problem for him to casually take out things like food boxes and jewelry, but to move such a large sculpture, he was afraid that it was still not enough. The larger the object, the heavier it was. If he wanted to take it out of his inner world, he would have to use up an enormous amount of mystic consciousness. He still hadn't reached the required level yet. It was just that coiled body, twisting and turning, looked very awkward. Could it be a big snake? At the thought that there might be a snake condor in her inner world, Xiaomu felt uncomfortable all over. She felt uncomfortable everywhere. Arbor shivered inwardly, and his heart was suddenly filled with anger. Why did she fear such a dark and twisted thing from the bottom of her heart? No. One day, he had to make a trip to the mystic beast forest. When the time came, he had to overcome this fear. Otherwise, once his enemies learned of this weakness, he would probably suffer in secret in the future. After making up his mind, Arbor tidied himself up and walked out of the cultivation room with the little white squirrel in his arms. Xixia Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang, who had heard the news, quickly walked toward her with his personal disciple, Wendan. Little junior sister, congratulations on successfully advancing. Wendan's gaze flickered as he sized her up. What are you doing? Luo Jinyang's gaze revealed admiration. Your little junior sister's current cultivation is 1 level higher than yours. You naturally can't see through her cultivation. Chapter 460. Level 11? Wendan was shocked. Little junior sister, you leap to become a level 11 great mystic cultivators? The advancement speed of holy water sex disciples was indeed shockingly frightening. Little junior sister was only a level 8 mystic cultivator before, so this large leap simply stunned everyone. She wasn't even 13 years old this year, but she already became a level 11 great mystic cultivator that many people yearned for even in their dreams. This was simply no harm without comparison. Once they did, they would feel that other people's talent was filled with eerie malice toward them. Arbor expressionlessly nodded and said to Xixiao Valley's Valley Master, "Good Valley Master, Senior Sister Wen, I'll be leaving now. Thank you for taking care of me these past few days. Farewell." "Little Junior Sister, where are you going?" When Dan asked with fear and trepidation. "Senior Sister Wen, why ask when you already know the answer?" Arbor aloofly said, "I've already been delayed in Xixiao Valley for 4 to 5 days, so I hope you too won't obstruct me again. You're wasting what little time I have left." "Little Junior Sister, why bother?" When Dan looked at her with knitted brows and said, "Even if you go back, it won't make any difference. Miss Xiao Xiao, in truth, I've already sent some people to your holy water sect 4 days ago. But did you know? Those people I sent out, I expected them to not come back. On the day I left, I told them that this rescue mission would undoubtedly fail." Arbor's small fists had already unconsciously clenched tightly. "Good Valley Master, be more careful in the future and don't be a goody two-shoes anymore. After I leave, take your disciples and find another place to live in seclusion for a period of time." "Little Junior Sister," when Dan was anxious, "our Xixiao Valley isn't afraid of trouble. We're not afraid of being implicated by you." The disciples of Xixiao Valley, who came after hearing the commotion, all looked up at the plain-clothed little girl standing on Qingwan. They felt that the little girl's plain-clothed appearance was as cold as ice. Xixiao Valley's Valley Master said, "Miss Qiao, please reconsider. Your master, Murong Sun Shi." Xixiao Valley's Valley Master hadn't even finished speaking when he saw the large azure bird circle once in the air before flapping its wings and flying towards the sky. Arbor stood steadily on Blue Luan's back, his belt fluttering as he reached out and cupped his fist slightly towards everyone expressionlessly. "Good person, Valley Master, fellow brothers and sisters of Xixiao Valley, I, Arbor, will remember today's grace in my heart. When we meet again in the future, I will definitely repay this kindness. Goodbye." Screech! Qingwan let out a long cry. Finally, it was no longer suppressed by its little master. It spread out its wings that were tens of meters long and rushed into the distant sky with a whoosh. Luo Jinyang raised his head and sent her off with his gaze, his eyes revealing a trace of appreciation. "Although Miss Qiao is young, she is extremely intelligent. I hope she'll be fine." "Master," Wen Dan passed down the order for the entire valley to make preparations. "We will leave Xixiao Valley today and head to the clan's secret grounds to stay for a while." "Yes." Qingwan pierced through layers of clouds and flew out of Xixiao Valley at an extremely fast speed. Ao Yi and his group, who were guarding outside Xixiao Valley, had waited for a long time until today. They almost thought that Miss Qiao wanted to stay in Xixiao Valley for a while longer. Suddenly, they saw a large bird rushing out of Xixiao Valley. Ao Yi was startled and abruptly jumped out from his hiding spot. "It's Miss? What direction is that?" "Captain, that doesn't seem to be the direction of Shijiao City." Chapter 461. Ao Yi jumped up. "That's in the direction of the Holy Water Sect." "Why is Miss go to the Holy Water Sect? Didn't His Highness say that she wanted to go home? Don't worry about that. Quickly follow her." Ao Yi was so anxious that he stomped his feet. He hastily commanded everyone to board the flying mystic beasts and chase after her. However, Qingwan was extremely fast and was already 50 kilometers away in the blink of an eye. Even if they chased after her, they would be half a beat slower. Ao Yi was so anxious that he was fuming. He slapped his teammate who was riding the flying mystic beast. "Make it fly faster. It's already the fastest, Captain." Arbor activated her defensive mystic weapon with a wave of her hand and shielded herself from the fierce winds in the sky. She didn't know that Ao Yi and the rest had chased after her day and night. She only sat quietly inside the defensive barrier and took out a large handful of ebony to draw talismans piece by piece. Her expression was as calm as water, and no one could see any change in her expression. However, her eyes were focused on silently carving talismans, one talisman after another. Except for a few moments when she slept on Qingwan's back and opened her eyes, she began to silently draw talismans again. She drew talismans one after another until her eyes turned red, but she was still oblivious. 300 ebony blue binding talismans could form 5 intermediate-level binding talisman matrices. These intermediate-level binding talisman matrices, made from ebony, could bind around 10 people at once, provided that their cultivation was equal to or lower than hers. 300 ebony blue mystic guiding talismans could form 5 intermediate-level mystic guiding talisman matrices. Within an hour, she would continuously absorb the mystic energy in the world into her body to replenish her rapidly depleting mystic energy. After crossing the Great Swamp, Arbor was basically in a state where she could kill anything in her way. Whoever dared to stop her from returning to the sect would die, without a doubt. Thus, when Aoye and the rest rushed to the Great Swamp, they were simply stunned by the mess of corpses in the swamp. All the zombie crocodiles were beyond recognition. Most of them had their heads chopped off, and many of them were frozen into ice sculptures erected at the edge of the swamp. Later on, they didn't see any more zombie crocodiles causing trouble. They were probably afraid of this short-tempered little girl and quietly dispersed. In less than 6 days, Xiaomu directly exited the Great Swamp and arrived at that adventurer base from back then. Qingwan really needed to rest. It had been flying day and night without sleep for so many days and nights. Arbor felt sorry for it. When they entered the adventurer's base, Arbor put it away and let it sleep on her shoulder. She went straight to the market to find someone to buy a horse. No matter what, the earlier the better. She prepared a horse and rode towards Wuyu City. She would wait for Qingwan to wake up before flying. Calculating the time, she estimated that she would be able to rush back in 7 days. This was already the fastest speed she could achieve on this trip. It was all because of the existence of Qingwan. Otherwise, it would be impossible. "I'm buying a horse." A cold voice rang out in the bustling market. Everyone turned to look, and when they saw the little girl's snow-white and frosty appearance, they couldn't help but be stunned. There was a lot of turnover in the adventurer's base. The little girl hadn't come for so many days, and the people doing business in the market had already changed. "Yo, little girl, where are you going to buy a horse?" A second-rate voice rang out from behind, causing a series of men to laugh maliciously. Arbor's gaze turned cold. Chapter 462. Back then, when she followed Mo Lien to the bazaar, it was obvious that the crown prince wasn't easy to deal with. From start to finish, no one dared to cause trouble for them. So, it was because she looked easy to provoke. TSK, what a beautiful little lady. Coming to our adventurer base alone? Are you looking for a husband? Ha ha ha. Laughter rang out around them. Someone even joked, "How many husbands does this little lady want?" Soon after, a wretched howl was heard. Everyone's laughter seemed to be stuck in their throats as they stared dumbfoundedly. The loafer who was the first to tease her was actually kicked away by the little girl. His whole body flipped in the air and smashed into someone else's horse trough. His head was bruised and bleeding, and he was groaning in pain. The horse neighed in fright. Without another word, Arbor tossed out a handful of Duan used shooting star powder. That loafer screamed several times, but before he could get up, he fell back down heavily and died miserably on the ground. 18 small nails had appeared on his face, body, and limbs. One of them hit between his brows, seeking his soul. Kill in one step. This time, all the teasing passersby all sucked in a cold breath and took a step back. This little lady's attack was truly ruthless, taking a life in an instant. As expected, those who dared to come to the adventurer base alone weren't easy to deal with. The men who had just teased that loafer and asked Arbor how many husbands she wanted quickly shrunk their necks and left dejectedly. Boss Ma was also trembling with fear as he looked at the little girl in front of him, whose face was covered with frost and whose body was emitting a chill that came from the depths of her bones. Arbor tossed him a mid-grade magnetite. "Pick out the best horse for me. It's going to be a long journey." Yes. How could this little great ant be trifled with? Boss Ma naturally didn't dare to cheat her, so he quickly picked out the sturdiest horse and handed it to Arbor. Arbor mounted the horse. She had barely taken 2 steps with a flick of her wrist when 5 to 6 local ruffians holding clubs noisily came over from the road ahead. "Who is it? Which little bitch killed my brother? Come out immediately." Boss Ma quickly hid behind the stable and peeked, shaking his head and sighing in his heart. These local tyrants had been in the adventurers' base for a long time. They had formed a small gang and often extorted ordinary merchants. However, today they had probably kicked an iron plate. The little grandaunt's eyes flashed with anger. Suddenly, a jet-black feral appeared in front of her eyes and leaped forward. "Those who block the way will die." Xiao Mu swatted her feral down, immediately smacking the head of the local thug into his neck. When the remaining 4 or 5 little ruffians saw this, they were so scared that they peed in their pants. Their legs trembled, and they knelt down on the ground with soft knees. "Great Aunt, please spare us. Great Aunt, please spare us." Arbor straddled his horse and held a feral in his hand. His body was full of killing intent as his eyes swept across both sides of the road. This time, no one dared to come out and throw their lives away. They all trembled and scrambled to the corners. When a spacious road appeared in the middle, the vendors on both sides were scared out of their wits. They hurriedly moved their stalls to the corners, afraid that they would block this little great aunt's path. Arbor pulled the horse's reins and scolded. When she pulled back, the horse galloped forward and disappeared in front of everyone in a flash. Chapter 463. After about 7 to 8 minutes, everyone finally calmed down from their fright. They looked at each other and saw the deep terror on each other's faces. This truly was a little fiend who wanted to take their lives. They blamed themselves for not bringing their eyes with them on the road. These days, not just anyone could be provoked. She might look like a soft little girl, but in reality, she was even more frightening than a demon god. After Arbor rushed out of the adventurer base, she galloped toward 5 Moon City. She galloped all the way until the second night, when the horse was about to foam at the mouth, before she finally stopped and switched to Qinghuan to fly in the sky again. However, it was already a bit late. At this moment, the Holy Water sect welcomed a subversive, all-around crisis. Lu Yizhi and Xiao San brought a total of more than 700 people from Shuntian Prefecture's forces on Sikong Planet. They arrived at the Holy Water sect's mountain gate a day ago and encountered Ani Prefecture's assistant manager, Hong Jinchuan, who rushed over after hearing the news. At that time, Lu Yizhi's expression was very unsightly, but after careful consideration, he reached an agreement with Hong Jinchuan. The two sides planned to first take down the Holy Water sect and find the sacred water. Then, they would see who the sacred water favored and pass peacefully. Of course, whether the other side would be unconvinced and start fighting at that time was another matter. At least for now, Shuntian Prefecture's Lu Yizhi and Ani Prefecture's Hong Jinchuan could be considered to have reached a preliminary agreement. In merely one night, these people slaughtered many Holy Water sect disciples like wolves and tigers. When Murong Sun's group hurried back, everyone had already retreated to the sect master's peak. At the beginning, many disciples were unprepared when the people from the 2 prefectures rushed in. So when the Holy Water sect master rushed out, the disciples guarding the mountain gate were all dead. The sect master blocked Lu Yizhi and Hong Jinchuan's attacks by herself. Although she barely managed to protect the remaining disciples and led them to the sect master's peak, the sect master was clearly on the verge of death by the time the 3 peak masters rushed over. "Asun, I really have to trouble you to take on this heavy burden this time." The Holy Water sect's sect master trembled as she took out a token and handed it to Murong Sun, who was standing at the head of her bed. "Master, from now on, Murong Sun is my Holy Water sect's 17th sect master." "Master." Yang Shirong and Lu Yun both knelt down, their eyes filled with tears as they looked at the dying sect master. Su Shanshan and the other disciples knelt at the door with their heads bowed. Drops of tears fell from their eyes onto the bamboo floor. "Asun, Arong, Ayun. Master, disciples are here." The 3 of them choked out, almost unable to speak. "Master's greatest achievement in this life is taking you 3 as my disciples." The Holy Water sect master half reclined on the cushion and held her 3 disciples' hands. She said with a smile, "Although I call you wicked disciples all day long, I've never seen you before. But I know very well that the 3 of you are the most filial. Master, you should rest. You'll get better." Yang Shirong sobbed, "I won't be able to recover. I know my own situation. It was already a miracle that she was able to survive until now after fighting against so many experts from the 2 prefectures. Right now, only the people from the 2 prefectures had come, and they could still hold on for a while. If everyone from the 6 prefectures were here, right now, Master will tell you a secret." The sect master coughed heavily several times and tightly gripped Murong Sun's hands, covering the heated sect master token. Chapter 464. In the ancestral hall behind the sect master's peak, there is a mechanism behind the Buddha statue. Sun, take this token and you can activate an emergency space talisman matrix. It can directly transport you all to a place in Poland Manor. Poland Manor is the most aloof place among the 6 manors. Most of them are women, cough, cough, cough. You shouldn't be detected if you sneak into a remote place. Of course, this space talisman matrix hasn't been used in several hundred years. Master also doesn't know if there will be any problems during the transport process. Also, this talisman matrix can only transport 200 people. We still have 500 or so disciples left. So Sun, Master will not take responsibility for this difficult decision of who stays and who goes, and will entrust it to you. After saying this, the Holy Water sect master clutched her chest and coughed violently. Suddenly, she straightened up and spat out a mouthful of blood. The 3 disciples' eyes glistened with tears, and their hearts were grief-stricken. They all reached out to gently press her chest. "Master, sect master." The master and disciples tightly clasped their hands together. The Holy Water sect master heaved a long sigh of relief and slowly collapsed into her pillow. A faint smile hung on her lips, as if she had fallen asleep, and she passed away just like that. "Sect master." The disciples outside the door wailed and wailed mournfully. Murong Sun tightly gripped the sect master token in her hand and suddenly raised it with one hand. She turned around and sternly said, "Yang Shirong, this sect master decrees you as the 18th sect master of the Holy Water sect effective immediately." Yang Shirong knelt on the ground and looked up, dazedly gazing at her senior sister. She cried with tears in her eyes, "Eldest senior sister? Wrong. Immediately take 200 disciples to the ancestral hall Master spoke of and leave the Holy Water sect immediately." "No, senior sister, you have to leave with us." Yang Shirong jumped up from the ground and shouted loudly. "This matter was caused by my lax disciplining of my disciples. I have no face to face everyone in the Holy Water sect. Everyone can leave. I can't leave." Murong Sun shook her head and sternly stared at Yang Shirong. "If you still treat me as your eldest senior sister, leave immediately." "Eldest senior sister. I don't want eldest senior sister. Eldest senior sister." Yang Shirong's voice was hoarse from crying. "Shan Shan, Shui Xiao, follow your second martial uncle." "Master, we won't leave." The 2 of them refused in unison. "You." Murong Sun was both anxious and angry. At this moment, a disciple hurriedly rushed in and shouted, "Eldest martial uncle! Eldest martial uncle! The people from the 2 manors are rushing up the sect master's peak. Our own, leave immediately." Murong Sun yanked Yang Shirong up from the ground and gave her a heavy shove. "Second senior sister, hurry up and leave." Luyan also called out anxiously as she pushed the 3rd peak's disciple, Chen Hanzi, to Yang Shirong's side. At this moment of life and death, many disciples shouted, "I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I vow to live and die with the Holy Water sect." "Third sister, you're not leaving either." Yang Shirong's eyes widened in shock. She wanted to pull Lu Yun's arm, but Lu Yun gently shook off her hand. "Second senior sister, please take care of yourself. The heavy burden of the Holy Water sect will be entrusted to you." Lu Yun cupped her fists and smiled lightly at her. Hurry and leave. The anxious Murong Sun kicked Yang Shirong and dragged her and the 200 disciples she casually picked out, pushing them out the back door. Are holy water sect disciples afraid of death? Murong Sun asked coldly. No. You won't lose out if you kill one, but you'll make a profit if you kill two. Kill. Chapter 465. Master, do we have to go? Second Peak's disciple, Yu Gei, cried as she repeatedly looked back at the path they came from. The originally quiet and tranquil bamboo forest was now filled with the sounds of battle. The 200 disciples felt like their hearts were being burned by a raging inferno, and their eyes were brimming with tears and hatred. Go! Yang Shirong hardened her heart and flung her head, leading the 200 disciples toward the ancestral hall. It was only at the last moment that they realized there was such a special passage in the sect. Otherwise, they would have brought the child along. Now, the child was all alone. Just thinking about it made one's heart ache. Second Ant Master. Chen Hanzi bit her lower lip and sobbed uncontrollably. Don't cry. Yang Shirong held back her tears and roared. Don't disappoint the sect master and the 2 Peak Master's intentions. We must survive with determination. There is only hope if we survive. As long as the Holy Water Sect has us, the Holy Water Sect will not be destroyed. Yes, the Holy Water Sect will not be destroyed. No matter how difficult the path forward was, they would not shrink back, even if it was covered in thorns and hidden thorns and filled with deep ravines. Even if they had to crawl all the way until they were covered in poisonous thorns, they would do their best to crawl down, because each of them carried the lives of 800 Holy Water Sect disciples on their backs. 800 disciples as one heart and one life. The Holy Water Sect would not be destroyed. It would never be. When the Sect Master token activated the Talisman Matrix and a burst of moonlight enveloped the 200 disciples, strings of mysterious, transparent runes flowed around their bodies like twinkling stars. Everyone cupped their fists toward the bamboo forest and silently said with tears in their eyes, Senior and junior sisters, we will meet again someday. The ancestral hall trembled slightly before regaining its tranquility in an instant. Luigi coughed and panted heavily as he slaughtered the Holy Water Sect disciples along the way. When he rushed up the Sect Master Peak, he was blocked by a water pillar. He couldn't help but smile with narrowed eyes. The Lower Star Domain is truly a mystical place. There's actually someone who can control the water spirit in the tiny Holy Water Sect? Could it be that the sacred water is on you? Murong Sun sneered at him. You can come and try. You'll know whether it's on me or not. The two of them were like 2 shooting stars that streaked across the horizon. Suddenly, they made their moves against each other. Whooshing, whooshing. As the profound energy was activated, bursts of exploding cyclones spread out around the two of them. At the same time, Hong Jinchuan was leading many disciples from the 2 prefectures to kill Holy Water Sect disciples and interrogate them about the Holy Water's whereabouts. I don't know. A Holy Water Sect disciple collapsed on the ground and glared angrily at Hong Jinchuan. She laughed harshly. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you bastards. Go to hell. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly self-detonated. Lu Yun, who was in the middle of exchanging blows with an elder from the 2 manors, couldn't help but sway. She looked back and bit her lip. The Holy Water Sect disciples' consecutive self-detonations were all blocked by the defensive mystic weapons in the hands of the 2 prefectures. However, at this moment, their expressions were rather ugly. This bunch of ants actually dared to resist. Until now, not a single person had revealed the whereabouts of the holy water. This really made them lose face. Hong Jinchuan's eldest disciple, Gong Yang, fiercely picked up a fat woman and slapped her. Speak. Where is the holy water? As long as you're willing to say it, I'll give you a chance to live. Sister Fat pounced and heavily knocked her head against Gong Yang's head, immediately leaving a large red mark on his forehead. She spat a mouthful of spittle on Gong Yang's face and laughed loudly. Little bastard, go to hell. These 2 days, I've entered an important turning point in this book. After the turn, my Qiao will be big. Don't be anxious. Let me write slowly and write more brilliantly. It's best if you don't influence my train of thought. Today's 10 chapters will end. Tomorrow will still be 10 chapters, and the day after tomorrow, it will resume to 6 chapters. Next week, the author will be very busy. There are also some readers who are worried that the author will abuse 100 chapters to purposely separate my Qiao and the Crown Prince. That won't happen. The author will never abuse for the sake of abuse, so don't worry. Finally, please repeat after me 3 times. The author is my Qiao's biological mother. Chapter 466. Boom! Although Gong Yang activated his defensive artifact, he was still flung out by the force of the self-explosion. He tumbled heavily on the ground, his head bleeding from the impact. Fat sis. The girls of the first peak cried out in grief. The fat sis who took care of everyone's daily needs for 30 years, cooking soup and cooking for them every day, and beaming with smiles every day, no longer existed. Damn it! Fury rose from Gong Yang's heart, and he staggered up from the ground. When he saw the disdainful gazes of the other senior and junior brothers of Ani Prefecture, fury rose from his heart. Lu Yizhi and Murong Sun's palms collided, and the two of them swiftly separated. Surprise flashed through Lu Yizhi's eyes. The highest cultivation in the lower star domain is a level 15 mystic cultivator. But I actually can't see through your cultivation. But it doesn't matter. I'll find a few more people to spar with you. Even if you can surpass level 15 and reach the spiritual realm, you must be suppressed right now. Ha ha, cough, cough, cough. I heard your sect master died, so the entire sect is grieving and indignant right now. Ha ha ha. I'll go have a chat with your damn sect master. I'll see if you disciples and grand disciples are willing to let your old sect master's body be riddled with holes and become neither human nor ghost. Ha ha ha. You dare! Fury burst out of Murong Sun's eyes, and a water vortex swiftly shot over. However, before it could wrap around Lu Yizhi, that old geezer, she was entangled by 5 or 6 Shuntian Prefecture elders. In Shuntian Prefecture, these level 15 elders were, at most, just outer sect stewards. But in the star field, each and every one of them was respectfully addressed as elders. No matter how high Murong Sun's cultivation was, she was still tightly entangled by several Shuntian Prefecture elders. She could only glare at Lu Yizhi with bloodshot eyes as he charged into the sect master's room. Master, Lu Yun crazily attacked the 2 elders from the 2 prefectures from the other side, forcing them to retreat step by step. She flew over and dashed toward the sect master's room. The 2 elders' guts rose as they simultaneously unleashed 2 bursts of vigorous level 15 profound energy, attacking towards Lu Yun's back. Puffed. Lu Yun staggered forward a few steps and spat out a mouthful of blood, but she still dashed toward the sect master's room. Junior sister. At the same time that Murong Sun formed a water defense in her hand, she abruptly flipped her hand and threw down a water judgment. Snow water that blotted out the sky and covered the earth tumbled down the snowy peak, crashing toward the 5 to 6 Shuntian Prefecture elders with a boom. While the many elders of Shuntian Prefecture were alarmed, evil thoughts overtook their minds, and they all worked together to channel a terrifying mystic energy vortex that directly bombarded Murong Sun. Murong Sun swallowed a mouthful of blood, and her eyes were crimson red. With a wave of her hand, her head of fine black hair fluttered along with her robes. In everyone's eyes, the first peak's peak master's crimson robe shone brightly under the night sky. In the blink of an eye, the entire snowy peak shook, and all the snow water flowing underground was drawn out, surging towards the disciples of the 2 prefectures that at the same time, Lu Yizhi had already flashed into the sect master's room. He raised his large palm and was about to strangle the sect master's neck. At this time, the sect master's bed suddenly flipped over, and a person jumped out from under the bed, ruthlessly punching through the chest of Lu Yizhi, a level 15 great mystic cultivator. Pfft. Lu Yizhi spat out a mouthful of blood and hastily grabbed a large handful of pills to consume. As he swallowed the pills in large mouthfuls, he viciously glared in the direction of the bed and was stunned. Chapter 467. Although the holy water sect master was ghastly pale, she still stood there perfectly fine. How was she already dead? A woman in her 50s stood beside her, supporting the sect master's arm. The two of them didn't say a word and pounced towards him. The profound energy from each of their fists intertwined and swept towards his face with a boom. Luigi was shocked. He had already experienced the sect master's strength. She was an out-and-out level 15 great mystic cultivator. As for the old woman beside the sect master, her strength was also not ordinary. Xiao Hong, take the children and leave. The sect master abruptly pounced over and grabbed Luigi's body tightly. Everyone saw the door to the sect master's room being smashed open. Their sect master, who had already breathed her last, actually rushed out with Luigi in her arms and flew toward the snowy peak. "Ah, son, let's go." Before everyone could react, the sect master left behind her last words and rushed toward the snowy peak with Luigi in tow. At the same time, there was a huge explosion that Aunt Yi's eyes instantly moistened. Following this explosion, half of the sect master's peak split open, and a soul-stirring avalanche began with a bang that at the same time. Duan Yu, who was rushing back to Daybreak Sect, and Sida Yi, who was at Heavenly Tao Sect, received news of the Holy Water Sect being attacked at the same time. Daybreak Sect's sect master, Liang Wanshan, made a prompt decision. The three sects are united. We can't just watch the 6 prefectures besiege the Holy Water Sect. "Master, I'll go with you," Duan Yu immediately said. Everyone turned back and headed toward the Holy Water Sect. At the adventurer base, they ran into Heavenly Tao Sect's Sitamin and company and hurried toward the snowy peak. On the other side in Five Moon City, City Lord Wu Mantian and his wife stood by the window, deeply worried. They looked up at the pitch-black sky, not knowing what to do. Everyone in Five Moon City knew about the huge commotion caused by the Holy Water Sect tonight. No one knew what happened at the Holy Water Sect's mountain gate, so the common people naturally didn't dare to poke their noses into other people's business. Until the next day, everyone was speechless as they looked at the Holy Water Sect's mountain peaks that had been practically flattened. In particular, the sect master's peak seemed to have been directly shaved off by half of its peak. The entire peak was shorter by more than half, and the soaring flames burned for an entire night. No one dared to go there and see what had happened. The Five Moon City Lord only dared to send 2 10th level experts over to take a look. However, very quickly, the news they brought back was that no one from the Holy Water Sect was left alive, that everything seemed to be settled. The world-shaking battle 3 days ago seemed to have been buried by the snow that never melted all year round. These past few days, the citizens of Five Moon City had been whispering in private, saying that the Holy Water Sect might have offended an expert from the middle 6 prefectures, which led to the tragic extermination of their sect. Who did you say was exterminated? A fair and clean little hand suddenly grabbed the noisy woman's collar and lifted her up with one hand. The woman was so scared that her legs kicked wildly, and she begged for mercy again and again. "Spare me, miss, spare me." After rushing for 3 days and 4 nights, they finally arrived at Arbor in Five Moon City. They couldn't accept the news at all. Impossible. She shook her head. Master wouldn't lie to her. Arbor shook its head vigorously, then shook its head again. Suddenly, he left the noisy woman behind and sprinted towards the city gate. Everyone saw that the plain figure was as fast as a wisp of smoke. In the blink of an eye, he had passed over 100 people. They couldn't help but stare at him in amazement. Chapter 468. Arbor dashed out of the city and quickly arrived at the foot of Snowy Peak. As soon as she reached Xianghe village, her heart trembled from the deathly stillness. Deathly stillness. It really was deathly stillness. Usually, this small village at the foot of Snowy Peak would be very lively at this time. Children's laughter mixed with women's chatter, and men came down from the mountain after a day of hard work. Smoke rose in spirals from kitchen chimneys, cheerful laughter, but now, all of this was gone. Deathly stillness. It really was a deathly stillness. Arbor dashed into the village entrance and stood there in a daze. What appeared before her were only dilapidated fences, dilapidated walls, and wreckage. It was incomparably wretched, and there wasn't a single complete corpse. Senior sister. Senior sister. Arbor dashed to a holy water sect disciple whose face was covered in blood and grime. She hugged her head that had rolled to the side of the grass and shook it vigorously. Senior sister. Arbor hugged this head tightly and didn't notice at all that her chest was already drenched in blood. Senior sister. Senior sister. This senior sister and the others all had cultivations around level 5 or 6, and they guarded the mountain gate all year round. Arbor's eyes reddened, and she abruptly turned her head. She suddenly fished out a small, intact girl's body from under a headless corpse as if she had gone mad. She was a bit warm to the touch. This child was still alive. She was still alive. Xiao Mu immediately performed acupuncture and breathed into her, promptly feeding her the best medicinal solution she had on hand. After a long while, the girl coughed out blood and weakly opened her eyes. Her eyes suddenly emitted a faint light. I know you. You fly in the sky, Sister Immortal. The girl's voice was hoarse and gloomy as she spoke intermittently. I'm not some immortal. I'm just a useless person. I can't save you. I can't save anyone. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Arbor's tears immediately flowed down. Too late. Her reply was too late. It was still too late. This girl was already incurable. If she could return half a day earlier, perhaps she could. Or perhaps if the sapling was here, she could ask it for an excellent spirit pilled. But it was useless to say anything now. Sister, my mother said that the dead will turn into monsters. The girl's internal organs were all injured, and she hadn't had enough food and water for so many days. She was already on the verge of death. As she spoke, blood constantly spurted out from her mouth. I don't want to become a monster. Arbor hugged her, tears falling on her face. She nodded heavily and said, Sister promises you. You will never become a monster. Okay? The little girl pointed and cried out weakly, And my mother? Arbor hugged her tightly and subconsciously reached out to cover her cold little hand. He murmured softly, Big sister will bury you and your mother together. You won't be separated anymore. Your mother will continue to protect you in her next life. Big sister, don't cry. You're an immortal. The little girl's voice grew weaker and weaker until there was no more sound. Arbor bit her thin lips and hugged the little girl tightly. She lowered her little head and said softly, I'm not an immortal. I'm not. I can't even save you. Rushing all the way from Xianghe village to the mountain gate, on both sides of the mountain path, she occasionally saw several incomplete corpses of her senior sisters. Xiaomu did not know how she managed to walk up. She really did not know. She felt as if she was floating, as if she was stepping on a ball of cotton or a cloud. She staggered up the mountain while stumbling. Chapter 469. She didn't have many tears left. In the past, Xiaomu truly did not know that a person's body could shed so many tears. So when she ascended the sect master's peak and stared blankly at the tragic scene in front of her, she didn't shed any tears. She just stood there in a daze, staring blankly. The bamboo buildings were razed to the ground, and the sect master's favorite bamboo forest was also burned to the ground. She couldn't tell which of the corpses on the ground were the enemies and which were her sisters. Her foot kicked something. She looked down and saw that she knew this person. It was Second Peak's fool, Chang Yushi. She squatted down and patted Chang Yushi's blood-stained face. She said expressionlessly, Fool, get up. Didn't you want to be my follower? I'll allow it. Get up. Chang Yushi closed her eyes and didn't say anything. She no longer had her usual vigor. Get up. Get up. Arbor scooped up her body and watched as the lower half of her body fell to the ground with a crash. She walked forward in a daze and saw countless familiar faces. Third Peak Senior Marshal Sister Li Ling. The first time she met her was before the operation in Qinghe Town. She walked up to her, and introduced herself with a bright smile. I'm 3rd Peak's Li Ling, 2nd Peak's Senior Marshal Sister Su Qinghu. Back then, she was carried back to 2nd Peak by 2nd Marshal Uncle. When she came out of seclusion, she saw Su Qinghu fainting from hunger on 2nd Peak. She thought they were idiots. Su Qinghu even asked her, "Are you very hungry?" At that time, Senior Marshal's sister, Su, smiled shyly at her. "I'm fine, little Junior Marshal Sister." "Fine? Not fine at all? You're all dead now." 2nd Senior Marshal Sister. She saw 2nd Senior Marshal Sister Shui Zhao's half-severed body fall into the snow pit. She turned around and sprinted forward, pouncing on a body. Compared to the other pitiful Senior Marshal Sisters, eldest Senior Marshal Sister, Su Shanshan's body was very intact. She quietly lay beside the snow pit with her eyes closed, leaning her head against 2nd Senior Marshal Sister Shui Zhao's half-severed body. Arbor thought she was so sad that she couldn't cry anymore. But her tears kept falling down inexplicably. She couldn't stop it at all. "Liar!" Arbor forcefully slapped eldest Senior Sister Su Shanshan's arm and whimpered. "You told me in Qinghe Town that you would protect me. You wouldn't leave me alone." "Liar, liar!" Arbor slapped her twice again. Then, as if he had thought of something, he looked back and forth at the corpses on the sect master's peak. She suddenly dragged out her voice and yelled, "Murong Sun! Murong Sun! Murong Sun, where are you? Murong Sun, you big liar! Murong Sun, you lied to me." She dragged her tired feet and circled the entire sect master's peak, but she did not see Murong Sun. Instead, he found 3rd Marshal Aunt Lu Yun's head. She hugged Lu Yun's head and stumbled over to Su Shanshan's side. She placed Lu Yun beside Su Shanshan and cried until her voice was hoarse. She said pitifully, "3rd Marshal Uncle, stay here and accompany eldest Marshal Sister. I still have to find my master, but I don't know where my master has gone. 3rd Marshal Uncle, where do you think my master went?" She then picked up Lu Yun's head and helped her wipe off the dirt on her face. With a confused expression, she asked, "3rd Marshal Uncle, where do you think my master went?" Murong Sun, come out." The little fellow placed Lu Yun's head next to Su Shanshan and suddenly sprinted toward the ancestral hall. Chapter 470. Half of the ancestral hall had been destroyed long ago, leaving behind only a small portion of lonely wreckage. Arbor dazedly flipped through the miniature life lanterns of the sect's disciples. She watched as 2nd Senior Sister Shui Zhao's battered body was flung away at the final juncture of her battle with the enemy that Arbor could not shed any more tears. She propped up her cheek with one hand and flipped through the miniature life lanterns one by one. When she saw the sect master dragging a stooped old man up the snowy peak to self-destruct, she suddenly froze. She recognized this old man. She had met this old man once outside Xixia Valley's 2nd Southern Courtyard. Later, she also saw this old man on the competition field. Wasn't he a guest elder of the Ghost faction? What exactly were the middle 6 prefectures rumored in the marketplace? Could it be that this guest elder of the Ghost faction was actually someone from the middle 6 prefectures? She did not find Murong Sun's life lantern. Perhaps because the ancestral hall collapsed, more than half of the disciples' life lanterns were smashed down by rocks. Arbor lowered her head and searched through the cracks in the rocks for a long time, but could not find it. Instead, she dug until her fingers were bleeding. "Master." Chucho did not dare to speak and weakly called out, "Don't dig anymore. It probably slid down the snowy peak due to the avalanche." "Murong Sun, you big liar," the little stoic expressionlessly retorted. "You still have a master. Master will definitely accompany you in the future. Master has never lied to you. They were all lies." "Chucho, do you know?" The little stoic muttered to herself hoarsely, "I won't have a master in the future." "Huh. What are you afraid of without a master?" "Without a master, you still have me, your older brother." "Little beauty, as long as you're willing to return with me, I guarantee you'll eat and drink well in the future. You definitely won't have a bad life." An ear-piercing, teasing laughter suddenly barged into Arbor's ears. She stood up and took a step forward. The tip of her foot kicked something like a hard iron tablet. She bent down to pick it up and flipped through it before putting it away into her inner world with an icy expression. Afterwards, she looked up at the group of people outside the ancestral hall. She recognized them all. Myriad Faction's faction master's son, Fei Qing, sickly and lecherously eyeing holy water sect's disciples all day long. Ghost sect's elder Ghost Surd, Granny Witch and her group from Coitus sect. One of them was an old friend of Arbor's. Back when they were fighting for the paradise, Mo Lien had helped to extract a strand of her soul. She was Yao Ji of the Coitus sect. At this moment, her life spirit was still in Arbor's inner world, so when Arbor looked at her coldly, Yao Ji's eyes narrowed slightly. "You pervert. You won't change even after 3 sentences." Coitus sect's Chi Mei covered her mouth and giggled. She swayed her body flirtatiously and smiled sweetly at Arbor. "Junior Marshal sister, you're the only one left. TSK, TSK, tisk," she's crying. Look on that tear-stained face of hers. TSK, TSK, the tears haven't even dried yet. If the Holy Water sect's 3 peak masters saw this, their hearts would definitely ache. Arbor coldly stared at this woman and coldly said, "What? Ghost sect, Myriad Faction, Coitus sect, and Ghost sect can't wait to hit someone when they're down?" Myriad Faction's Fei Qing pretentiously smiled and said, "What are you saying? Our 3 factions also heard that something happened to the Holy Water sect, so we specially rushed over to take a look and offer our condolences. Little Junior Marshal sister, don't be afraid. Come to brother. Brother will protect you." Chapter 471. Protection? Xiao Mu's eyes involuntarily narrowed, and her eyes, which were as cold as ice, slowly swept a glance at Fei Qing. Fei Qing inexplicably shuddered on the spot, but at the same time, he secretly became excited. He had always liked pretty girls, especially younger ones. He liked them even more. In the towns near Myriad Faction, there were at least 800 if not 1,000 girls who had been ruined by his hands. Chi Mei jokingly called him a pervert, and that was not just in name. When he was in Xixia Valley, his heart had long been itching uncontrollably in front of so many pretty girls from the Holy Water sect. Unfortunately, his father, Fei Pingyi, had severely warned him not to be rash due to the presence of the 3 peak masters. As a result, he didn't dare to make a move during the entire competition. Normally, he would have seen this exquisite and adorable little junior sister who was like a small ice sculpture long ago. Unfortunately, this little fellow was never alone. She was usually surrounded by a group of people and stars, so he didn't have a chance to make a move. But today was different. Look at the dilapidated surroundings. The Holy Water sect had been exterminated. What other backing would his little junior sister have in the future? Wouldn't it be easy for him to capture her? As he thought about this, Fei Qing's expression became even more smug. He glanced at Arbor with greed in his eyes and beckoned at her again. "Little junior sister, don't be afraid. Come here. Aren't we old acquaintances?" On the side, Chi Mei giggled again. Unexpectedly, when she met Arbor's bone-chilling eyes, her heart skipped a beat for some reason. Ghost Surd impatiently roared from the side. "You still have the time to waste with her? Why don't you capture her first?" After speaking, he didn't care about how flustered and exasperated Fei Qing was. He stretched out his hand toward Arbor's neck. He originally thought that he would be able to pick up the little girl like picking up a little chick. Ghost Surd's eyes even emitted an evil glint. Most of the Ghost Faction's disciples who came to participate in the competition were killed by the Holy Water sect. Now, the heavens had eyes and gave them retribution for their sect's extermination. If he didn't act now, when would he? When he ruthlessly attacked, he seemed to have completely forgotten that the Ghost Faction's people had suffered many setbacks at the little girl's hands. When they first met, he, Ghost Surd, was already no match for the little girl. Let alone now. A silhouette flashed in front of Ghost Surd. With a sweep of his wrist, a dagger slid across Ghost Surd's neck, drawing a long line of blood on his neck. Ghost Surd subconsciously touched the line of blood on his throat. As he fell, his eyes were filled with disbelief. His life was taken away as soon as they met. Why? That yet Granny Witch's hair stood on end, and she bellowed, "Idiot, this little brat is no longer that little level 8 mystic cultivator from back then. She... Pooh." Granny Witch only felt a pain in her back. She was thrown a few steps forward and spat out a mouthful of blood. This sneak attack caused her to be greatly alarmed. The disciples of Coitus sect were also dumbfounded. They all turned their heads to look at Yao Ji, who had suddenly attacked Granny Witch. Their faces were filled with shock and astonishment as they shrieked in terror. "What are you doing, Yao Ji?" "I pledge my life to the young master." Yao Ji shouted at Xiao Mu and clawed the face of a Coitus faction disciple beside her with a backhand. Immediately, a gurgling stream of venom flowed out of that disciple's face. Chapter 472. Previously, Yao Ji was still a bit hesitant, unsure whether she should make a move or not. One had to know that the three factions had gathered about 100 people, and the little girl was alone. If she suddenly betrayed Coitus sect and stood by the little girl's side to resist the three factions' 100 people, then she would undoubtedly die. However, her fate's soul was in the little girl's hands. If she didn't help her, then she would definitely lose her life on the spot. With the little girl's ruthless temperament and vicious methods, she definitely wouldn't let an enemy like her off. Thus, Yao Ji made all kinds of calculations and felt that she would definitely die at this moment. However, when she saw the little girl slash Ghost Sword to death with a dagger, Yao Ji knew that her chance had come. The little girl seemed to be much stronger than she expected. She knew she had to gamble this time. She stood behind Granny Witch and instantly pierced Granny Witch's heart with a cold stab. How could Granny Witch and the Coitus sect disciples have anticipated that Yao Ji would suddenly make a move? Their Coitus sect formation was thrown into chaos. At the same time, the little girl had already rushed forward. She flung out countless flying talismans, trapping Fei Qing's group. Ebony intermediate level binding talisman formation. It could bind at most 10 people at a time. These people's cultivation levels were slightly lower than hers. Once she used this binding talisman formation to bind them, everyone turned pale with fright. They were bound inside the talisman formation circle and couldn't escape no matter how hard they tried. Only now did they remember. During the competition, the little girl had once used this move against Daybreak Sect's Mu Liangda. At that time, they were still secretly mocking Mu Liangda for being useless for not being able to defeat a 12 to 13-year-old little girl. But now, when they had a taste of this binding talisman formation, their faces suddenly turned pale with fright. They couldn't move. They couldn't even release mystic energy after being bound by this binding talisman formation. Fei Qing, this useless guy, was so frightened that his face contorted. He continuously tried to break out of this talisman formation and looked up at Arbor with a pale face. Just as he called out, "Little junior sister," the little fellow furiously raised her ferrule and smacked it down on his head. "Who's your little junior sister?" Was the 3 words "little junior sister" something a filthy guy like you could call out? "Die for me." Arbor tossed out a handful of shooting star scatters with a flick of his hand. Ding, 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 they hit the people in the array. Fei Qing and the others were like turtles in a jar, unable to resist at all. After a burst of meteor scattering, Fei Qing was horrified to find that the disciples he had pulled in front of him to resist the meteor scattering were now like live targets, their bodies covered with small nails. "You!" Fei Qing's face was filled with panic as he shouted. At this critical moment of life and death, he didn't dare to call her junior sister anymore. He also didn't dare to tease her anymore. Instead, he kept saying, "How dare you, little bitch? If you dare to hurt me, my father won't let you off." Fei Qing felt that his threat was useless. The little girl's face was expressionless as she directly struck out a mighty, profound energy that fiercely struck Fei Qing's chin, directly smashing his mouth into pieces. Fei Qing's unpleasant roar came to an abrupt stop. Arbor pounced forward and fiercely struck his head with the ferrule, immediately smashing his skull open. Brain matter burst out, and he died on the spot. "Since you're here, then stay." The little girl pinched 2 core-crushing thunders between her fingers and fiercely threw them into the crowd. Under the panicked gazes of the crowd, the core-crushing thunders suddenly exploded. Aoye and the others chased with all their might, but when they heard the explosion halfway up the mountain, they immediately flew up the snowy peak. Chapter 473. Little miss, you're a bit interesting. A sinister laugh came from Arbor's back. Ani Prefecture's Hong Jinchuan had actually been guarding the Holy Water sect this entire time. Ever since the sect master self-detonated while dragging Lu Yizhi, Lu Yizhi was heavily injured and could no longer fight. The entire Shuntian Prefecture strength was also greatly reduced. The remaining people from Shuntian Prefecture carried Lu Yizhi down the snowy peak. However, Hong Jinchuan was unwilling to give up, so he led the 300 people from Ani Prefecture to guard the sect for a few more days. Sure enough, he had been waiting for someone to come today. He had been secretly observing the little girl and learned of her identity. Holy Water Sect's first peak master, Murong Sun's personal disciple truly was a girl with outstanding strength. The disciples from the three factions could not last more than a few moves in her hands before they scattered like birds and beasts. Unfortunately, a mere level 11 mystic cultivator was nothing in his eyes. Little girl, obediently tell me the holy water's whereabouts. I can spare your life. Hong Jinchuan chuckled as he looked at Arbor. Calculating the time, the people from the other prefectures should be arriving soon. Before that, he had to trick the little girl into speaking up as soon as possible. If it didn't work, he might have to use some unpleasant methods. Holy water, Arbor muttered to himself. As expected, they came for Lady Holy Water? But why did they call it holy water? Yes, it's holy water. We received news that the holy water is inside your holy water sect. Unfortunately, they turned the entire holy water sect upside down, but did not find anything. The strangest thing was that such a large sect did not even have a treasury or something like that. It simply made people depressed. Where's Murong Sun? The little girl suddenly asked coldly and did not answer Hong Jinchuan's question. Hong Jinchuan couldn't help but be angry, and his lips twitched with a fake smile. Your master? Don't tell me you still don't know? Look at your sect. Corpses are strewn everywhere, and broken limbs are everywhere. Why are they so incomplete? Ha 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 ha. It's because idiots like them are all playing with self-detonation. Ha! Unfortunately, to us level 15 great mystic cultivators, it's like the light of a firefly and can't harm us at all. Xiao Mu suppressed the resentment in her heart and coldly gazed at them. The auras of Hong Jinchuan and the others were indeed very powerful. There were more than 300 people from Ani Prefecture, and she couldn't see through at least 100 of them, which meant that their cultivations were definitely higher than hers. Moreover, how many of them were level 15 great mystic cultivators like Hong Jinchuan? If it was only for her to challenge level 10 or level 23 great mystic cultivators above her level, she might still have a chance. But now, asking her, a mere level 11 mystic cultivator, to challenge multiple level 15 great mystic cultivators was practically sending herself to her death. Of course, she also had her trump cards and might be able to kill a few level 15 great mystic cultivators. What's your name? This old man is Hong Jinchuan of Ani Prefecture. Hong Jinchuan wasn't worried at all about the consequences of exposing his name to the little girl. In his opinion, Murong Sun, his last disciple, was already a dead person. Murong Sun self-detonated? The little girl asked expressionlessly with pursed lips. You killed her? The little girl pressed on. Hong Jinchuan became impatient. Does it matter who killed her? You're just a little girl. Could it be that you want to avenge your sect by yourself? Chapter 474. I advise you to honestly tell me the holy water's whereabouts. Otherwise, suddenly, a binding talisman matrix landed on the 10 Ani Prefecture disciples. At the same time, Arbor flung out a core ravaging thunder, which shattered half of the ancestral hall that had collapsed with a boom. Qingwan was released, and with a shrill cry, it swooped down and unleashed an arctic frost slash, blowing 3 to 4 Ani Prefecture disciples who were caught off guard into ice sculptures on the spot. Arbor swept her ferrule across, and those ice sculptures shattered into pieces. The severed limbs wrapped in ice tumbled to the side with a plop. "Silly girl, you actually dare to be so audacious," Hong Jinchuan shouted angrily. Did she think that she was still fighting a motley crew from the Three Gates? What she swore to fight to the death was Ani Prefecture, one of the 6 prefectures. Although this group of people might not be considered as experts in an E-prefecture in the lower star field, it was more than enough to deal with a mere little girl, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. "When this old man catches you, I'll break your limbs and see if you'll tell me the holy water's whereabouts." Fury flashed through Hong Jinchuan's eyes, and he instantly exploded. His fingers formed a claw as he clawed at Arbor. Clang! This claw actually grabbed a thick defensive barrier, causing the old man's claw to stiffen. What? This damn girl's defensive barrier was actually so sturdy. How could he know that ever since Arbor advanced to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator, several layers of seals on her eggshell defensive barrier had also been opened? Now, it probably wouldn't be much of a problem to deal with 8 to 10 heavy blows from a level 15 Great Mystic Cultivator. In the blink of an eye, the ferrule in Arbor's hand had already gathered the power of flames, and it struck Hong Jinchuan's arm with a whoosh. Apart from his shock, Hong Jinchuan's eyes were filled with greed. "Spirit weapon? Damn girl. The Holy Water Sect truly treats you very well. They're even willing to give you a spirit weapon, little girl. Unfortunately, we'll have to see if a little girl like you can keep your life to hold it." Hong Jinchuan snatched the ferrule from her hand. Tigers roared and birds chirped. Hundreds of beasts came out. Qing Luan was surrounded. Arbor flung out a small golem to block the saber slash coming from Ani Mansion's disciples from the side. "My lady, stay up late," and the others flew up to the faction leader's peak and saw a scary scene. Their family's young miss was actually besieged by more than 300 men and beasts. She was struggling to hold on, and her entire body was bathed in blood. Arbor looked back, and her pupils shrank. When she ran around the sect master's peak, she found that there were many broken bodies of black-clothed youths on the sect master's peak. They seemed to be the crown prince's subordinates. Why did he come here to die? This was her sect's matter and had nothing to do with others. They shouldn't have come. Stay up late, and dozens of others quickly summoned their own Shin beasts and joined the battle. However, even with their participation, there was still a huge disparity in numbers. She threw out a bunch of support talismans at Stay Up Late and the others. The Mystic Guiding Talisman Matrix had already been activated, and all the mystic energy within 50 kilometers of the Holy Water Sect continuously poured into her body. Greed and hesitation flashed through Hong Jinchuan's eyes. It was a bit of a pity to kill such an exceptionally talented, great talisman practitioner. "If you're willing to hand over the sacred water and sacrifice a strand of your soul to me, I'll spare your life and spare their lives." Arbor responded by biting the tip of her tongue and spraying a mouthful of blood onto her ferrule. The ferrule emitted a strange light. Chapter 475. It clanged in Arbor's hand and suddenly flew out. Raging flames sprayed directly at Hong Jinchuan's face. Hong Jinchuan raised his saber to block, but the profound weapon in his hand was actually cut in half by the ferrule. The tip of the saber stabbed into the ground with a clang. A trace of fury shot out of Hong Jinchuan's eyes. The moment his body exploded, he circulated all the profound energy in his body and viciously attacked Arbor's head. In the nick of time, a faint, moon-white phantom leaped out from the ferrule and abruptly shielded the little fellow. It met the old man's ferocious attack head-on. Bang! Hong Jinchuan spat out a mouthful of blood in shock. His body was already uncontrollably sent flying backward. Arbor's large eyes widened. She subconsciously bit her lip and hurriedly ran forward a few steps. She inexplicably opened her arms, wanting to hug that faintly discernible phantom. Mo Lien! Mo Lien must be injured. He's injured. Mo Lian's phantom turned around and looked at her with an anxious expression. Arbor had just reached out to hug that phantom when he heard a soft sound. His entire body suddenly disappeared from her embrace. The little fellow foolishly made a hugging motion just like that. Wah! Mo Lian disappeared. The little fellow opened his mouth and did his best to suppress the urge to cry. Choking with sobs, he shouted at Ao Yi and the others, who had just fought a bloody battle. Hurry and leave. She turned around and flew toward Sky Peak. Behind her, An Prefecture's people followed closely behind her like a pack of wolves and tigers. At the same time, far away in Guanlan City, Mo Lian's hand trembled as he flipped through the memorial. A trace of blood actually slid down the corner of his lips. Your Highness? Xiao 11Z, who had been bending over to offer him tea with both hands, was so frightened that he rolled on the ground. The teacup in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. Some of the officials in the southern study, who were in the middle of a meeting, also cried out when they saw this scene. Your Highness? Yan Qi suddenly appeared beside him and called out anxiously, Master. The red brush in Mo Lian's hand made a cracking sound. When she raised her head, her eyes were already filled with a bloody storm. Someone had touched the divine sense he had left in the feral. Something had happened to his Jojo. Mo Lian immediately stood up. Little Seven, let's go. Weren't they going home? Weren't they going to Shijio City? Why did they appear in the Holy Water sect? Why didn't stay up late? And the others sent him a message. Mo Lian was burning with anxiety. Just now, the wisp of fragmented image that was transmitted to him before the wisp of divine sense dissipated simply terrified him to the core. The little girl was covered in blood, and her eyes were like ice. Disobedient. Too disobedient. Why didn't you go home obediently? The golden dragon leaped up and flew into the sky. Everyone followed and ran out. They were tongue-tied as they looked at His Highness, who was running away. Your Highness, please don't. We haven't finished discussing the matter of Huqing's fortifications, that what His Highness left for them was a speck of golden light on the horizon. The officials looked at each other in bewilderment. At this time, Arbor had already led most of the Ani Prefecture's subordinates to Sky Peak. She turned her head and coldly stared at the level 15 great mystic cultivators in the front row. The Tianji treasure blueprint abruptly flew out of her conscious. All the mystic energy in her main and branch meridians were turned into mystic conscious and frantically poured into the Tianji treasure blueprint. Sky Peak is about to become your burial ground. She wanted these people to die. Her head already felt like it was being pricked by needles. With her current cultivation, using the divine weapon was still too forceful. Fortunately, the divine weapon was willing to cooperate. End of Night Watch. See you tomorrow. Take the pot lid and run. Chapter 476. That thin piece of paper rapidly expanded before everyone's eyes, flashing with a dazzling golden brilliance. With Arbor's current level 11 Mystic Realm cultivation, he could activate the 4th layer of the Tianji treasure blueprint. Under normal circumstances, activating the 3rd layer of the Tianji treasure blueprint wasn't a big problem. However, Arbor was currently forcefully activating the 4th layer of the Tianji treasure blueprint and carrying out a large-scale, indiscriminate group attack. Just the 3rd layer of the Tianji treasure blueprint wasn't enough. Right now, she was facing 5 to 6 level 15 great mystic cultivators as well as 100 or so level 12 and level 3 great mystic cultivators. She wanted to bury them on Sky Peak and accompany the entire Holy Water sect in death. She needed to kill them in one strike. She didn't have a second chance that an endless stream of mystic conscious desperately squeezed into the Tianji treasure blueprint. Divine weapons were all sentient objects. It already sensed that its little master was risking her life in this desperate attack. As if she was risking her life. It wanted to reject the remaining portion of mystic conscious. It didn't want anything to happen to its little master. However, its master had already sunk into a completely deranged state, so it couldn't stop her at all. The Ani Prefecture's disciples only felt that the light was very glaring, and they couldn't resist closing their eyes. However, in the next instant, the grain-shaped concealed weapons that blotted out the sky instantly pierced through their bodies. Two level 15 great mystic cultivators bore the brunt of the attack. The grain-shaped concealed weapons pierced through their defensive barriers and directly turned them into sieves. They even dazedly lowered their heads to glance at themselves. Afterwards, they discovered that their bodies were riddled with tiny holes, and they were all spurting out small streams of blood. Their heads instantly ruptured, revealing a bizarre and terrifying scene. Like a torrential downpour of sand, their entire bodies turned into bone dregs with a crash, and minced meat splattered all over the ground. This terrifying instant immediately scared the other level 15 great mystic cultivators into retreating several steps. They activated all the mystic energy in their bodies to reinforce their defensive barriers. The remaining 3 level 15 great mystic cultivators were already completely stupefied, and they stiffly turned their heads around. Only now did they see clearly that under the indiscriminate attacks of the Tianji treasure blueprint, the 200 or so people from the Ani prefecture had all been reduced to a pile of bone marrow and flesh. They mixed into the snow and dyed the entire ground reddish-brown. More than 200 people. More than 200 people. They were all level 10 mystic cultivators and above, but they were killed just like that. Among them, 2 careless level 15 great mystic cultivators were also killed in this group attack. This could no longer be called a battle. It was a one-sided slaughter. Arbor's mystic sense was severely damaged. After the attack, he fell limply onto the snowy ground. Her eyes stared fixedly at the pitch-black sky above her. It turned out that unknowingly, the night fog had already enveloped them. In the past, she had never felt as dark as today. Above the horizon, not even a tiny star could be seen. It was too dark, too dark. The 3 level 15 great mystic cultivators stared intently at the Tianji treasure blueprint that had shrunk to the size of a piece of paper hovering in the air. Their eyes shone with a wolf-like ferocity. Cough, cough, cough. Tianji treasure blueprint. Hong Jinchuan clutched the wound on his chest and ascended sky peak step by step. His vicious gaze landed on Arbor. Damn, lass, you're so young, but each treasure on you surpasses the last. It's a pity that beautiful women are short-lived. These things cough, cough, cough will all take your life. Hong Jinchuan sneered. Chapter 479. The middle-aged mystic cultivator spat out a mouthful of blood. While he was greatly alarmed, his complexion also turned ghastly pale. There was actually a projection in front of him. The figure's face was indistinct, but he knew it was a young woman's voice. It could be seen how powerful that soul projection was to be able to transmit her power through her voice and injure their conscience. Even in the middle 6 prefectures, they had never seen such a terrifying person. Who was it? Did the Holy Water sect have such a powerful backing? Who dares to harm my disciple? Soul explode. The instant that powerful projection pounced down, a powerful force that made one's heart tremble suppressed his entire body. The middle-aged mystic cultivator watched in horror as his body involuntarily spread open. It was actually boom. The next second, the middle-aged mystic cultivator was forced to self-detonate against his will. The other 2 great mystic cultivators, who were scared out of their wits, immediately broke into a run when they saw that something was amiss. Can you escape? Both of you. The emotionless voice rang out again. Suddenly, for invisible barriers erected around the 2 level 15 great mystic cultivators, and a black fog mercilessly burned and evaporated around them. There was clearly only a wisp of concealed black fog and not a trace of smoke, but the 2 people's wretched howls could be heard throughout the 5 peaks. It was extremely mournful. Their figures shrunk along with the black fog around them. It was as if the water, blood, bones, and flesh in their bodies were evaporating inch by inch, losing their final supporting barrier inch by inch, until they softened into a puddle of black water and completely disappeared into the barrier. Hong Jinchuan's body trembled from head to toe. His legs were numb and weak from fright due to the scene before him. "Your Excellency, please spare my life. Your Excellency, please spare my life." Hong Jinchuan involuntarily knelt down at this time, with a face full of piety and extreme submission. There was not a trace of humiliation in his heart. Facing such a powerful expert with such a powerful aura, Hong Jinchuan could not muster any thoughts of resistance. Right now, his mind was filled with regret and fear. If he had known that the Holy Water Sect had such a terrifying backer, how would he have dared to come and cause trouble? "Pa!" As the mysterious man flicked his sleeve, Hong Jinchuan suffered a heavy slap on his cheek. Immediately after, a dozen slaps fell like a storm on Hong Jinchuan's old face. Soon, his face was swollen and his teeth were shaking as he spat out blood. How dare ants surround and attack a raging tiger? The furious shadow grabbed Hong Jinchuan and tore his body in half effortlessly. Then, he threw Hong Jinchuan to the ground like a piece of paper. Xiao Mu was already lying on the snowy ground, and she was merely staring blankly at that violent apparition in a daze. So powerful, so powerful. In her eyes, level 15 mystic cultivators were merely existences akin to ants. With a flip of his hand, he could destroy them in the span of a breath. Master, that the shadow in front of her should be her former master, that little tree mentioned. No wonder she felt that it was so familiar. Arbor felt her eyes sting, but she couldn't shed a single tear. She clearly wanted to cry so badly. Little treasure, the illusory figure anxiously called out. "Are you all right? Don't make Master worry. Your soul is unstable, so don't recklessly use the Fushi Greatsword. Take it back and don't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Remember, Master." Chapter 480. Little treasure, Master's good child. You've already grown so big and beautiful. Master only wishes for you to be well. Right now, your mind and body can't control the Fushi Greatsword, so remember, don't summon it. Good child, Master and your Ant Master both miss you very much. After that apparition abruptly dissipated, the lingering voice still lingered in her ears. The little stoic blankly laid there without moving. Her nose was sour, and a single sentence reverberated in her mind: Master and Ant Master. Don't abandon little treasure. Don't abandon little treasure. Little treasure will be obedient. Master! The sapling's voice abruptly rang out, containing a trace of anxiety and fear. What happened? Why did you make yourself so miserable and desolate when I only went into closed-door cultivation for a little over a month? Qiuqiu, sect master, is dead. Murong Sun is also dead. Eldest senior sister, second senior sister, and the others are all dead. Even Big Treasure is dead. I don't have anything left, the little stoic pitifully said as she hugged Big Treasure's round head. How could you not have anything? No matter what the future holds, at least you still have me, Qiuqiu. No matter where Master goes, Qiuqiu will accompany Master. Qiuqiu loudly exclaimed with heartache. Master, don't be afraid and don't worry. Return to Paradise Planet first. Qiuqiu, bring your senior sisters back too. Okay? Okay. Arbor's voice was hoarse as she nodded lightly. Even if it was just a few broken limbs, she still wanted to properly bury them. She would bury them on Paradise Planet's peach orchard slope. That place faced a peach forest and was surrounded by a large emerald lake. Her senior sisters would definitely like that place very much, right? Master, your conscience is about to dry up. You have to rest well and recover well. After the sapling carried Arbor back to Paradise Planet, he squatted next to her. The two beady eyes on the tree trunk were filled with worry as they looked at her. I want to lie down for a while. I don't want to think about anything or say anything. Master, where's the holy water? Arbor suddenly thought of something and her mind jolted. After the divine water fused with you, it will also receive a portion of my power. It should have absorbed most of it by now. I'll go and drag it over. The little tree thought for a moment and secretly sent a message to Lady Holy Water. I see that Master is in a bad mood now. You have to be careful. Ever since Arbor had fused with the essence of the holy water, the two of them had formed an indirect connection. Goody! The water ball obediently shrank itself into a small ice bead and bounced onto its master's hand. Since the life essence had completely merged with its master, Lady Holy Water could also obtain some benefits from the sapling. She then went into seclusion. Now that it had taken advantage of the small tree's power, it had also advanced to the middle stage of the infant stage. Master, you only need to summon Dian with your mind right now, and Dian can come out and attack with liquid and solid water at any time. The little ice bead abruptly transformed into a ball of water and quietly floated in the center of Xiao Mu's palm. Arbor, however, remained expressionless. Suddenly, he flipped his hand and tossed it aside. Leave. From now on, I am not your master. You can leave my mystic domain and go wherever you want. The water ball turned into an onion head water doll with a bang. It suddenly took a step and pounced towards Arbor. It cried out pitifully, Why, Master? What did Dian do wrong? Master, don't be angry. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.